Everybody be quiet. Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, dark and light, and everything in between. This is the Thorne coming at you with my good friend Brandon and my beautiful wife Camilla. Flesh Priest is probably taking off for tonight. He said he might call in or something, but he's kind of feeling a little under the weather. So hopefully he'll join us soon. Hopefully the sound is good. Hopefully we don't have any sound issues. You know, sometimes we got to fix that when the stream starts. So we'll wait and see if anybody comments and says they can't hear us. But you know, we'll just start talking. If anybody says they can't hear us, we'll just start over. So everybody knows Camilla pretty good. So let's start with Brandon. Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself and why we wanted you on. What's going on, man?
Well, man, I've been in magic now for quite some time. Been doing ritual, I would say, for close to 8 to 10 years, somewhere in there. I can't remember the first time that I really dug into this stuff and started getting deep. But I've kind of run the gambit. I started off being a preacher's kid, staunch Christian, growing up really strict, and then as I went on in life, and I've always been connected to the astral and the spirit world, and I've always had like a different view on things. Growing up as a Christian in the church, you would have all kinds of things that people would say from behind the pulpit, or teach in Sunday school and in the pews, and my experience told me something else. Right. So it'd give me a different, there's other spirits out there that are actually friendly or different or intense, or there's grades. There isn't just, predatory spirits and then Christ.
Right. And that's a big jump, man. That's a big jump for people. Not many people can make that jump very easily.
Yeah, there's a big shade of gray. There's a whole, line of information and experience out there that people miss to stick into that one religion or experience. But anyway, I went from there and had a couple of hardships in life, got into depth psychology a lot, and got into Gestalt therapy and hypnotherapy and a lot of energy work. And I got introduced to energy work in those things. I started going to Gestalt therapy weekends and really digging deep and going into identities and the self and how we live them and how it runs us, and the subconscious and how it works and how it shapes our three-dimensional reality. All that stuff, and we started getting into those things with certain teachers. I started getting into what the astral is and how that affects everything, and how our subconscious actually creates the astral in front of us and vice versa, and how it's all a mirror, and going into all that stuff. And so that opened me up to even deeper work. And then I went and spent some time in Peru and did a lot of shamanism and plant medicine work, and that allowed me to completely purge a lot of the indoctrination I had from Christianity, and opened me up to a whole new world of really digging into what it means to be spirit connected to things that I normally would have been afraid of. And so that completely just opened me up to ritual magic and to everything that entails. Started really exploring with it. The first ritual I ever did, I tripled my income, which isn't saying too much. Yeah. I mean, I was making like $19 an hour at Whole Foods.
Yeah, but still, man, I'm in the same boat. Double or tripling your income when you're poverty stricken is, and besides $19 an hour ain't too bad. Yeah. But no, that's, trust me, I am sailing the good ship Brokey Pop all the way to the end of the harbor, wherever it's going, man. Actually, I just did that working with Clownneck just the other night.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, is that motherfucker fast? Holy shit! Now, literally the fastest out of all of the spirits that I've worked with. 24 hours, and I didn't. Not only did I get we'll say, more or less a solution to the immediate problem I was having. Two items that were quite pricey sold off my store in the same span of in 24 hours for $500, like bang bang. I was like, whoa! They weren't selling. Yeah, go ahead.
Less than 10 minutes apart.
Less than 10 minutes apart. One guy bought them, and then the other one sold today. Yeah, the other one sold today.
How interesting it is too that those two things were $500 when you did it on a $5 bill.
A $5 bill? Yes.
There's so many confirmations if you can, if you really sense into it and look into it. It's just interesting, man. That Clownneck he's great. He's just a great.
I'm going to be doing a lot more, not just because he was rewarding. I really want to get to know, because, I've always had, if I say a shadow over money, money issues of finance, it wouldn't be quite a lie. To say it was a shadow, maybe not an actual shadow, but definitely not a focus in my life. Like I don't, I know I sell a lot of crap. I know a lot of guys listening to this are like, well, how come you guys do the buy my crap section so much? Because I got to eat. But frankly, I probably the reason why it's so transparent is because I hate doing it, and it's not really what I want to do. I don't want to spend all my time selling crap and worrying about money, and I want to be liberated from that. And going to a spirit for wealth or economics to me was always like, no, that's like exactly the opposite of what I'm interested in. I want spiritual growth and just power and not even power. I want self-liberation and all that. And so when I decided to work with him, I was like, all right, should I work with Maimon? Should I work with Lucifuge? Should I work with Person again? And I was like, well, I haven't worked with Maimon, I haven't worked with Lucifuge, and I haven't worked with Clowneck. And Clowneck's from a slightly different circuit from the ones I usually travel in, since I haven't really done Grimoire and Verum specifically, although I do use the Lucifer sigil from it. Well, I went there expecting just like, here's all the money and wealth you could ever possibly want, and instead I got this economy guru that was all about opening up blockages in your financial mind. Like he's not at all like, he gifted me with a lot of money, but the way he did it was unblocking the shit that was holding me back a little bit. Right? It wasn't like, oh, the doorbell rang and somebody showed up with 2 gold bars in their hands. It was, by the way, here's how you get your tax return to work. By the way, here's how you, some items you were trying to sell, they're just going to suddenly sell now. And it's like, oh, okay. So definitely appreciate that spirit a lot. And I want to get to know him a little bit better. And one of the issues, of course, with that, that I run into all the time is as soon as somebody hears you're working with a spirit of wealth, everybody wants to know how to do it and how to get money. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, man. I mean, that's where I'm at with clients today. I ended up, I guess that's the reason why I'm on the podcast and or the YouTube channel that you have now, is because I actually work in this industry now. Like I have a grimoire that's published by HarperCollins. It's Spells for the Modern Mystic. And I have clients that I work with that I teach them actually how to unlock all the metaphysical properties in themselves and actually become witches. And so, the archetype of the witch is something that I really teach off of and base everything off of. But the whole point is to get to neutrality, and you won't get there if you're in survival. And so, I think that's the whole reason why you have spirits of wealth and things like that. Everything that whenever I work with spirits, and whenever I teach people how to work with spirits, whenever I go through that whole thing from the ground up with the training that I do with folks, and we have to go through desires. You have to go from survival into power, and then into enlightenment, and then finding your birthright, and actually getting into the point to where the spirit world opens up to you in a way where, you have some form of mastery. And that's the whole reason for doing that work. You're not going to get there if you're in survival and stuck there all the time. It's not going to move.
I think everything revolves around, to some degree, integration. I think that's what it is. And you gotta integrate those stupid little base desires. Like nothing to me is sadder than when someone has been practicing magic for a long time and they're still caught up in the I must curse everybody, I must constantly be doing wealth rituals, I must this and that. And oh man. So no, and you and I had great conversations at first. I think when we first started talking, you were probably because you're more than an adept. You know what you're doing. So it wasn't really like you came to me for advice so much as you just wanted to talk shop with somebody who knew stuff, right? I wasn't just another person going, here, light this candle and fart on it or something. I actually had some deep thoughts to go with it. Yeah, so that was, and you're a brilliant guy, and so we hit it off pretty good. But yeah, so I mean, some of the fun would be talking about like one of the things that you did is something that I sort of have, and Camilla will probably jump in on this hopefully. We've always wanted to have like our own little apothecary or store or something someday. Like we've always thought how it's kind of like a romantic idea, but I think it's probably more trouble than it's worth, considering
it's so
how
much trouble, man.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So I think we like the idea of it.
Listening in that don't know, I helped launch one of the Atlanta's premier metaphysical brands. Like, it's highly successful, multi-million-dollar company now, and it's Modern Mystic Shop here in Atlanta. And I was a partner in opening that up and helping get everything off the ground and developing the culture that everybody trained in, and how to speak to people about spells, how to speak to people about crystals and what to do with them and all that good stuff from top to bottom. And we've created a great community there. It's really successful. I'm no longer a part of the company, but it is a lot of trouble, man. Unless you really know how to hire and train people, you're going to be married to that store. I mean, married to it. Your life will be that store for sure.
Yep. And even doing what I'm doing, my life is most of the time what I'm doing. I know I'm not as active as I was maybe apparently when I began, because I was way more active on Facebook. But honestly, like, even if it seems like, oh, I only have 1 or 2 clients in a day, I still feel like 10 hours out of my day goes into this somewhere, like either writing stuff for what's coming, making a video, dealing with the public, dealing with the client, dealing with my fans that are part of my Discord, all of that. Like, and I count that as work, believe it or not, even though I enjoy that. A lot of that can be work because people ask a question in there, and I don't treat that like, oh, we're just hanging out and people are asking me a question. I treat that like that's part of my lost leader, my professional service. Is like, if people ask a spiritual question on there, I give you the answer I would want to get if you paid me, right? I want to give a good answer.
Yeah.
And sure. I had this nice person the other day comment on, I don't remember their name, not sure they would want me to say their name, but they made a nice comment on one of my videos. They said something to the effect of, you're giving away what would be costing people literally thousands of dollars to go elsewhere for free on your YouTube channel, and you're giving away good stuff. And it's like, yeah, because honestly, I don't think that the basics should be behind a paywall. I think, my time is behind a paywall, but not the basics. The basics are that's what's you should be able to get your own gnosis, man. You don't need me to buy mine.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, the point is to get people to the place to where they're their own sorcerer, their own master of self. That's always been the goal with all the work that I've done. And giving away the basics has to, man, I know people coined this term, but it is the age of Aquarius, and a lot of that shit's going to be out anyway. It's just going to be coming out. You need to stop charging for it. Just get the basics out there and let us all elevate to a certain level so that we can have people who are really experienced take you to the depths. Because what you need to charge for, is your time, of course, like what you were talking about as a practitioner, but also initiation into energy. Like what I do with people in my courses, for instance, is I do rituals on a consistent basis while I'm teaching those courses, and I envelop people in my energy and pull them forward to help them transform. And I think that's what people who are more experienced in all of this need to do. We need to initiate people into energies and bring them forward, teach them how to get into portal work and things like that. And that's the advanced shit that you need to be charging for. Not like, how do I do this wealth spell, or what are the basics and setup of a foundation for clearing, and what does that do for me? And oh man, that shit needs to be free for sure. Yeah, I think so. And maybe like there's like the parts to me that are worth selling are the inspiring parts. So like if I have I give a lot of that away too, to be honest with you. But the parts where it's like the parts that inspire you to do it yourself, like I don't mind giving you the basic fundamentals, but if you really want to be inspired, I like to, that stuff is maybe different because I had to go through a lot of burning hoops to get it. But sure, and that makes sense because inspiration is work. To inspire someone is actually a lot of effort that you put into it. It's different than just sharing knowledge. Inspiration is a whole nother beast than just sharing knowledge. It goes beyond the mind; it drops into the being. And so inspiration has to hit a different way, and you have to carry a certain energy to do that, and that requires work on your part. And so that makes sense that you'd need to charge for that. That's your own brand of gnosis that you're giving to people. That's unique. And so it doesn't.
And Camilla, I'm sure, can agree because she's heard me say many times, like, what's the one thing that tires me out about my consults more than anything? It's not that people want to ask me questions, right? What do I say? It's that I feel like I got to inspire all these people, and they look to me with like those the big wide eyes, like they're hoping that I'll give them some kind of.
It's the feeling inspired while trying to teach inspiration.
Yeah, it's like it's that weird, annoying it's not a vampirism thing necessarily. It's not like I'm being vampirized, but it's a lot like that. It's like,
Sure.
how do you give when someone's already sucking you dry? You know, like and especially if, like, look, I have days where magic is the last thing I want to talk about now. Like I never thought that would happen. But there are days when that's the last thing I want to care about, and when someone's going to be like, "Oh, I spoke to a spirit last night," I'm like, "Yeah, sure, you fucking did," you know, because I'm sitting here looking at my rent bill, or I'm looking at something that I got to deal with, and it can be difficult to switch those gears sometimes, and to jump into it. Like a lot of people think, like, so Camilla, you and I went into that New Age shop in I guess we can say Port Jeff the other day, and we went there and. You know, it's a very right-hand path kind of shop, and
Just real quick,
you know, yes.
we have a super chat from Jay Sauber. You are awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jay Sauber. Yeah, Jay's another one of my early friends in this stuff, and he's been very supportive, and I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I don't know if I know you had mentioned you were going to watch some of those training videos. I don't know if you did, Jay, but if you did, I hope you got into that. If you didn't, just let me know if you want to, and you can save those $4.99s and put them into the training class if you'd rather. So, Camilla, would you like to take over a little bit of Flesh Priest job and maybe jump in with good questions when they pop up? If you get any good questions that are directed to us.
I do have three put aside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You want to jump into some questions, Brandon, or you want to wait a little bit?
No, man, we can play this however you want to. The questions may open up into some deep and long discussions, so it may be fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Because you and I could go for hours on some of the deeper subjects.
Man,
actually, you were the one
we
who
could riff all night, but let's hear what the people want to hear.
You're the one who turned me on to that book. Was it A Deed Without a Name? And I don't know if I loved the whole book, but some parts of that book were like, oh, that's right. They said things that I thought in a way that I wish I had said. Good stuff, very good stuff. Excellent book. But you turned me on to that book, yeah.
That book, one of the most, I think, eye-opening things about that book, and what I teach, but I haven't read in another book yet, that's actually like for real about witchery and about ritual, is that love is the key. The heart awakening is the opening for the ultimate desire, and desire is the engine that drives ritual. And so it's a different kind of love when you're talking about ritual and spirits. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting book because it goes.
Love is definitely important. I mean, I think a lot of people confuse desire, because your ego has its own idea of what it thinks it wants, and
Correct.
The ego, of course, being a delusional thing. It's never right. I shouldn't say never, but the ego is a tool, right? The ego is a tool, just like any other part of our character, and the ego has a habit of thinking it's in control and that it is what decides, and it's not. So if we give into that ego, we were talking about those base desires before. The ego tends to ride those base desires around, thinking that that's what makes it feel fulfilled. As someone who has achieved some of that fulfillment, I can tell you that ironically, the ego finds itself very depressed when those things are fulfilled. There's many a day when I look at my life and I go, I mean, yeah, all I have to do is aim higher, but I've already succeeded in all the basic things that I felt like would fulfill me, and that's not doing it. I still feel kind of meh today. So it's obviously not the things I'm doing, right? It has nothing to do with my goals or achieving those things or getting the money from the tax company. Or what really does it is the journey. It's the adventure of doing it and sink or swimming the whole time. That's what makes it fun. And so that's, thankfully I'm wise enough, I guess, or maybe not wise enough that it took me all this time to figure it out, but I'm wise enough now, I guess, to see that. And, it doesn't get me down. I look at my life and I go, oh, things are, what am I going to do with myself now? What am I going to do? But there's always another milestone. There's another 1,000 subs. There's another $5 Klonock ritual that'll turn into another 500, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the nature of desire, so that will grow. If we were completely content after we fulfilled a desire, we'd never change. We'd sit on a log and die. And so,
that's true.
After you fulfill a desire, you're like, hey, I got that new car. Okay, what next? And that's kind of where I take my classes at, man. That's where people find the epiphanies at. It's like, oh, you mean if I get rich through ritual, eventually, then that in the end, like what's next? I'm like, man, have you ever met some rich people? There's some depressed and angry fuckers. Like they're really not doing that well, because a lot of times what happens is they achieve all this money and then they don't understand that the fulfillment of desire, it leaves the taste in your mouth whenever you fulfill a desire, and that is so that you will evolve into a spiritual way of being. And so that because you move through the physical desires to get into the spiritual desires, and then when you get into the spiritual desires, you have a whole nother echelon of experience, and that's where you're talking about the journey, right? That's where the ego starts to be like, oh, you mean it isn't about survival? Cool. Let's have some fun with this. Let's laugh through this some, and let's open up and start to really relax so that we can expand. So it's cool shit, man, once you start getting there.
So Hellspine, we'll get into some of the older questions in a minute, but Hellspine is putting my wife on the spot, and I like that. So let's put my wife on the spot because he asked about Leviathan a little bit, and my wife is being way too talkative and domineering this conversation even worse than I usually do. So I figured I would begrudgingly shut up for a minute, and she could just be like, in the movie The Fifth Element, she can be like Bruce Willis's character and just be like, he's cool. So go ahead, tough girl. What you want? Is there anything you want to say to that? Anything you want to tell us all about Leviathan?
I haven't worked with him too recently, but I did have a voice pop into my head not long ago about doing the ritual for anathemy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to dedicate a. When I was younger, I was heavily into the Fantasy Blades by Gil Hibben and United Cutlery and all that shit. And Kit
Back when we thought those were good, and we didn't know that there were good knives out there, like my beautiful, authentic Nepalese kukri, the right way, not the big fat kind, the correct. Anyway, keep going. Sorry, I just had to show that off because I love my blades.
In 2014, I actually purchased one from United Cutlery, designed by Kit Ray, called Leviathan, and it was just this really cool blade. I'm sure you can look it up. I'm sure there's images on Google all about this shit because he was.
I remember Kit Ray because I actually saw a couple of the swords that they did. They were fantasy designs, but according to the website, they were battle ready, which I doubt because they sounded like they had really stingy tangs. So I didn't buy one, but they looked cool. So
I wouldn't use them for battle. I wouldn't use any of the fantasy blades for battle.
Yeah.
Maybe as like self-defense if someone breaks into your house and it's what you grab because it's there. Most of them don't come sharp.
And they're usually made out of like crappy stainless that's just stainless, so it looks like it doesn't get tarnished, and that's it.
Yeah. All that great either. It's not too much. I hate to say it like this. Some of them aren't too much better than just putting clay on a piece of metal. Essentially, it's not even hard
I know what you mean. We call those wall hangers.
It looked cool. As a 14-year-old kid getting Smoky Mountain Knife Works magazines in the mail, I thought it was a fucking cool, badass thing. I'm thinking of myself as like heavy metal chick.
Yeah, exactly.
With like the friggin' weapons and shit.
But see, that stuff's cool. See, I like the heavy metal chick, so I think I'm gonna make you do that later when we're off the air. I'm gonna get you into some heavy metal stuff, and we'll do a photo shoot. She's like, no, we're not doing it. So with Leviathan, there's not much going on since then. But you were.
But this dagger, it was actually called Leviathan, and it was something that I was drawn to. And one of the things that got me into working with Leviathan at the time was all of a sudden a lot of his name was popping up in pop culture.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to talk about him right now, by the way. There's something
interesting.
Things are seasonal, right? People either because the spirit wants everyone to talk about him, or the right person says something and everybody remembers that they're cool. I know that for me, the interest came up a lot recently when we started talking about the 7 deadly sins, and we started talking about how Leviathan was envy and all this other good stuff. And I'm like, I wouldn't mind talking to Leviathan, a little bit more again, and so yeah.
He always felt to me like a spring sort of being anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's a little bit in the fall, but more in the spring I feel inclined to work with him.
Well, definitely for you, because that's when your life becomes very tormentous, you know, tempestuous tormentous.
This work season's gonna be hell. I need it.
yeah, and it's like you might as well just give it all to him. But yeah.
No,
So,
but
or it. I guess you've said it's an it. It's not a him though. In your experience, it's definitely an it entity, right?
in my experience,
Yeah.
no, I feel like he's a him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, he can go either way, but he comes through as a him to me.
Cool.
I hear.
I mean,
the
like, interesting thing is, so Leviathan would be like the anti-King of Cups. Like, he's the King of Cups, but mad. Like, he's the pissed off version. He's more like the Queen of Cups, really. But he acts more like the Queen of Cups, where the Queen of Cups is often a moody pain in the ass. But yeah.
Me, I see him as like all the cups upside down.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, I get that.
You know,
I get that.
Like, you did it yourself.
Yeah. But definitely associated with that water element, all those emotions. He's definitely, a powerful entity of emotions. But, there's so much that goes into each one of these spirits that to say that that's what he is very flimsy, because there's so many different cultures that their input went into what Leviathan is. Leviathan being like Jormungandr, the world serpent. Yes. Leviathan being a little bit to some people like Tiamat. Although I would argue I don't like it as Tiamat because of that masculine angle, but I can see why people would say that. And all of that input that goes into him, or it, or her, depending upon how people like to see it, it definitely gives him more than just emotions. There's definitely more going on there. I don't know. Have you ever worked with them, Brandon? Have you ever worked with Leviathan?
Well, I'm in the Decante. I was initiated into the Decante lineage through a high priestess friend of mine who, her patron was Leviathan. And every time that I open up a ritual space, I call in Leviathan to represent water. And Leviathan's just so, whenever I call in that presence, I just experience a lot of watery depth, just almost like you could get lost in it if you're not careful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could, I can see where the correlation between working with Leviathan and madness, comes up here and there, is because you can lose yourself in those depths. Yeah, it's not something that you could just freely be with a spirit and just let yourself go unless you have a good relationship with it, because they'll take you out to as deep as you want to go. Leviathan can take you there. And so it just feels, and when I call Leviathan, it just feels like the whole room just fills up with water. It just almost feels like I'm underwater.
I will say the one time I sort of did a little bit with him, it wasn't much, was what it was like. You feel like you're underwater floating and there's this big monstrosity that dwarfs you. And your experiences were more vivid, Camilla, so I'm going to shut up a little bit and just let you run that one, because mine's like a 5-minute vision, and yours is like I sit out there for an hour talking to him. So yeah. I don't know if you want to just pop a squat on my head here.
The thing with Leviathan also is, it's like I've said in your video that we did together, Belial is the tower shaker. Leviathan turns the seas.
Yeah.
And like, I got in touch with him to get with help with my emotions, because they take over. And he, the day after I felt great, it was the second day that everything just went to shit. And then, like, I had that thought come into my head. His voice, his snarly, not snarly, the growl, deep growl like Smaug. This is a test. Like, deep growl in my head saying, this is a test. And as soon as I realized that, as soon as that came in there, I was okay. I let it go. I took a deep breath and I released fuck. There you go.
Fuck.
I That was my last fuck given, you know?
One of the things is, so Leviathan is a spirit that you don't see him on the surface of the ocean often. If you do, you're doomed, right? That's when the ships get destroyed. So Leviathan is that lurking beast monstrosity that's just, it's actually very, so you as a Scorpio, I forget what your moon is. I think you said your moon was, what's your moon?
Taurus.
Taurus, okay. Yeah, so but you as a Scorpio, so you have Hades, Pluto, Hades, very much underworld stuff, and I wouldn't say Leviathan is necessarily chthonic. I mean, whatever. I can never say that, but I wouldn't quite say he's that. But he definitely fits in that, and the idea that he is a spirit that lurks deep. So he's very much a Scorpio's type of spirit, right?
Yes. Very watery, very Scorpionic. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's very much a Scorpio type of spirit. So for you to have that, now me as an Aries, like, the cool thing about Aries and Scorpio, we fight a lot, but we're also infatuated with each other. So like I look at that and go, that's really fucking cool. I want to ride that sea serpent, right? That's how I look at it. Like I want to be the Thor that battles. I want to have that experience. Like, wow, let's do this. But no, I mean, but I respect the shit out of that spirit. So, it's interesting because it fits with you, because I think a lot of, not to analyze you on live air or anything like that, but I think with a lot of what makes you tick is stuff that is not on the surface. So like as an Aries, I'm more inclined to just tell you what's bothering me, or be obvious about it, or just hurt you because it bothers me. Whereas you are more inclined to, oh, it's fine, sweetie, and then like you're really pissed below the surface for days, and like a week or two later, I get stabbed in the heart. Like, what did I do?
You get stung by the stinger, man.
You get stung by the stinger, like after they're done snipping at you. Yeah. So, but
yeah,
so people are all excited because you said Dugante, Brandon. You said Dugante, so everybody's like losing their minds. Now, me personally, like I'm not an enemy of all that, but I'm not like a huge fan of some of it, because I think some of it has been turned into more than I think it probably is. But tell us a little bit about that. So I think that's an interesting angle, and maybe you can correct my record on the issue. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that, and because that's going to be a crowd pleaser for sure.
Yeah, I love the Decante, hierarchy. I love the lineage and the energy that runs in it. It's the lineage that has given me the most versatility with working with spirits, because you see, I can now that I'm initiated into that flow of energy, I can actually have a deeper relationship with a lot of the spirits that I was actually very interested in, like Lucifu Drofakel, for instance, or like Leviathan, like Belial, like Flarios, and of course Lucifer, and there's an interesting relationship that energy current has with all of those spirits, and the nine kings and different things like that. And so it's a very, very interesting. It includes Hecate. And I've done deep work with her. I've done months and months of deep work with her every damn day. Like that, I did a lot of work with her through Jason Miller stuff, but also adding in some of my own shit too. But yeah, fascinating energy current, man. A really versatile, really giving you access to a lot of spirits that in a unique way before I got initiated into that current. So very, very interesting. And on Leviathan note too, I know that we said Scorpionic, and we referred to it as a raging beast and everything, but I want the audiences to know too, there's room for it to be very Cancerian as well.
I was going to say, because yeah. it does lurk deep below the surface, and it's not always churning up that ocean. It's also controlling it and keeping it calm too. It's also, correcting that part. So why do things? Let's make this a quick analytical thing. Why do things get turbulent? Well, the turbulence is actually a way for it to balance the lack of balance, right? That's why you have turbulence. So Leviathan being turbulent and causing the chaos. When that chaos subsides, oh boy, does that ocean get like a sheet of glass for a little while, right? Because it's just all the imbalances have been cured. See, the reason that people suffer, beyond the obvious ones that are talked about in so many religions, the reason that people suffer is they spend so much time in balancing their situation, trying to only experience goodness. They're trying so hard to only have a good time and to suffer as little as humanly possible. In fact, I've said this in my streams before, and it's a scientific fact. Humanity and all animals really we like to think that we're motivated by positivity, but really we're not. We're really motivated by a desire to not experience things that make us unhappy, and we're willing to actually tolerate a certain amount of unhappiness, because fixing unhappiness can be very unpleasant. So the irony is, if we are constantly depriving ourselves of these up and down experiences, we're not balancing the energies. We're not letting life flow through. We are trying to create a dam that only holds the good times, and the problem with the dam is it also holds the bad times, and you end up getting sick and having problems because you're not balanced. So a spirit like Belial or a spirit like Leviathan, I think those two, they complement so well. One might even say Belial's like Bahamut and Leviathan, Bahamut versus Tiamat or whatever. Like one's the masculine earth fire, the other one's the feminine air water, and when you throw them together, that will. So let's put it this way: if you want your life, if you think your life is cool right now, invoke Belial and Leviathan both in a ritual, back to back, or if you can get them to come together, try it. It might not be easy, but do them back to back and be like, okay, what's wrong with my fucking life? Fix it up, and just be prepared, because it's gonna just be a roller coaster for a little while. You're gonna have your material life, your social life, your love life. Everything's gonna just come unglued for a little while, and then when it's done, you're gonna be stronger, and it's gonna be a lot better. And yeah, you're gonna have some scars, but you're going to be a much better fighter because of those scars, right? That's
well,
what
the problem is everybody wants to run around on the surface because, and I like to use the word comfort instead of happiness, because happiness is so subjective, but we're wired to not be uncomfortable. If there is discomfort in our body or in our system somehow, we want to get away from it just as quickly as we possibly can. And that's where the whole concept of some of the Buddhist teachings and Tibetan teachings and different things like that, where you walk toward discomfort, you walk toward pain, you walk toward as a practice, not even like going to things and being stupid about it, but as a practice, we move toward the comfort on a consistent basis, on an automatic level. And so we have to consciously move toward discomfort in a disciplined way, and that's the only way we can grow. In fact, the only way that I've ever grown and been and become a better human being is through my brokenness. I've never done it when I was, everything was all cherries and life was great.
Absolutely.
And I had a beautiful woman on my arm and all that shit like that. I never grew from that, but I grew from my brokenness. I grew when I was at the bottom of my barrel. And people think that working with demons sometimes is dangerous because they can take you to those places where you become broken. But actually, what they're doing is they're preparing you for evolution, and they're also making you live in truth. The truth of the matter is that there is no such thing as a life where it stays cherries all the time, and so. It's the nature of reality, because we were meant to learn and grow in this incarnation. And so in that, as we evolve, as our soul evolves, we've got to experience rough waters. And life and our soul contracts and our karmic contracts are all going to make that crash down on us anyway. And so you're lying to yourself if you think you just run from discomfort all the time, but you're not going to have a good life. It's not going to happen.
It's never going to work.
If you have discipline, on the other hand, and have a practice around everything, right? If you start getting into breathing techniques that are uncomfortable, if you start taking cold showers every morning and start, I know that sounds hokey, but just being very disciplined around physically putting yourself in discomfort, and allowing yourself to become okay with it, or being okay with being lonely.
Well, there's a catch-22 there, though, my friend, and it's the one the one that I want to get to is also, even saying what I'm about to say, I still get hit with it, because the 2020 definitely put me for a loop, especially since I had so much success that I actually got a little, not just complacent, but a little bit like I couldn't take the hit when it did end up being bad. When I did get a disappointment, it wasn't like, oh. And in a way, that's the danger of demons. So there's 2 points I want to make. Point one is that it's not that demons will make your life miserable. That's not what happens.
Yeah.
You're right about that. But what will happen is you're going to get what you ask for, because they tend to, especially when you first start working with the demon. Like the first 3 wishes, like a genie, come true almost like clockwork with any demon you work with. The problem is not that they're going to hurt you. In fact, I have yet to have an experience where they actually hurt me.
No.
What happens is you get what you want, and that in itself is the curse. It's that it's not that wealth is wrong. It's that greed can result from having wealth because you start becoming insecure about what happens to that wealth. Greed is a result of insecurity based on, hey, look, I got $100,000. I don't want to spend a dime of it, and I better get more. You get cheap and you get greedy, right? And that's what it does. It's not that the money is hurting you. It's not that the thing you achieved hurts you. It's that you get these attachments, and you don't actually learn these attachments. So the issue, though, the catch-22, is if we seek to eradicate that problem. So if we're enlightened enough to know that achieving my goals or seeking comfort causes me pain, that's like level 1. Level 2 is, okay, I'm going to become a little ascetic. I'm going to become an ascetic, and I'm going to take the cold showers, and I'm going to do the hard stuff. And level 2 is trying that and going, well, that helped, but I'm still pretty miserable all the time. Now I have this other problem where, I'm still not quite happy. What's wrong? And the next level, or one of the later levels, I'm not sure if it would be the next level, but definitely one of the later levels, is the recognition that so long as you're still trying to eradicate suffering, you're never going to do so. If you're constantly, if you're taking those cold showers with the intention of getting rid of the misery of a cold shower, guess what? It's never going to work. The only way it's going to work is if you, unfortunately, it's an irony. There's an absolute irony there. You have to stop trying to succeed. You cannot achieve it on purpose. And this is where people get really off in the weeds, because enlightenment or achieving this sense of peace is not an acquisition. It is not a thing that you learn or do. It's a thing you forget. You're forgetting the things that cause the problem. You're forgetting. You're removing the things that are the distraction from the fact that it's already there. You have to learn to let it all go and realize that you're always really content. Your true state as an infinite state of knowing, and not just this little ego mind that you think you are, is always bliss. It's always blissful. No matter what you think you're feeling, it's always going, this is freaking intense. I love it. That's why I'm doing it.
Exactly. So that's where you find yourself in the cold shower, right? In the cold shower, you're like, shit, man, this is crazy, and this feels crazy. But when you get out of it and you feel the benefits of the cold shower because you went through the discomfort, and now you're in a better spot because of it, right? You receive the benefits of it, better vascular flow, able to concentrate more, better energy, all those things. Then you start to realize, wait a minute, there's actually a reward in the discomfort. There's actually a reward.
But even that's not. I mean, that's another intermediary step. But at some point, and I'm not saying it's easy, because if it was easy, we'd all be doing it all the time. And I'm not saying I've achieved it all the time, but I've achieved it. Anyone can achieve it temporarily, and this is why there's a guy, Rupert Spiro, which I like to listen to sometimes, and his great point, one of his great points, is that achieving enlightenment isn't hard. We can achieve it, actually, most of us, quite easily. It's maintaining it, and the reason it's hard is those clouds keep coming back. Like you can realize that you're the blue sky and you're not the clouds, but those clouds keep coming back because and very few people to achieve that pipe dream of nirvana. I say it's a pipe dream for a reason. That pipe dream of nirvana, to achieve that, literally requires not caring that there's clouds in the way. It literally requires that you just say, you know what, I know that I'm the infinite sky, and that the clouds are just a disturbance in my experience, and I don't mind that they're there. And it leads me back to, and he would also say, like, I know that I am the universe. I do this all the time. I look around, I go, I know I'm that refrigerator. Sometimes I feel it a little bit. I know that I'm that wall. I know that I'm this, and I know that I'm that. And I can feel it even sometimes. I get this feeling like, I almost feel like I can reach out and touch myself just by doing it, It's a weird feeling, but then it goes away, like the bill will come due. My mom will call and we'll have a bad conversation. Something will happen, and I lose that focus again. I lose that understanding, So I mean, I think the whole thing with the cold shower, the the monk dousing himself in gasoline and meditating himself to death while he burns as a lesson to the authorities. All of that stuff, within that moment, your body could be in agony, your mind could be in agony, your emotions could be tumultuous. But that infinite state of knowing that lurks behind all of that is fine. And
right.
it's watching all of this going, this is cool. What's gonna happen next?
Exactly.
This is cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to.
That's the point, right? Is developing the watcher, and that's that's where you get into the advanced work, right? Is developing the state where you can actually tap into the watcher enough to where the watcher comes on more and more on an automatic level. And the watcher, for those of you that are viewing that don't know, the watcher is an old Buddhist understanding that there is a consciousness behind the actual three-dimensional understanding of our perception, of our senses. There is a state of I don't want to call it a state of being. There is an actual being that is you, that is the energy that runs you and who you are, and it's a consciousness behind it all, and just watches. And so
sure. Well, it's a tulpa. That's one interpretation of it. But in most Buddhists, and there's a mistranslation of Buddhism that is the popular one. Anatman, the whole idea that there is no soul, and that's not accurate actually at all. The fact, the idea is the soul's an illusion, but you do have an experience of a soul, right? That's undeniable. But the soul is also an illusion, because that's not what you are either. The soul is yet another. It's another facet. It's another triangle through which the all-seeing eye peers. But one thing that I've, in my writings, one of the things that, one of my other books that may or may not ever get finished, when defining the soul, when defining the self, there is the infinite state of knowing, which is more like a verb, and that is actually what you truly are. Then there is the knower and the known, and the knower would be like that watcher, but the knower is that relationship of self to other. It is the identity that causes the relationships to happen, and there's the known, and that is what causes all of that illusion. So there's the infinite state of knowing, and that cannot be personified as a knower. Right. It is the knowing, and that is the fundamental thing that you are. Everything after that is a separation delusion mentality. Everything after that. That doesn't mean, by the way, guys, when we're talking like this, the difference perhaps between, and somebody asked a good question I want to get to in a minute, one of the differences between perhaps a left or right hand perspective on enlightenment, or maybe a true hand perspective, because if you talk to the right, real Zen, real Vedic, guys that really understand this and have achieved it, they think this whole idea of intentionally getting rid of your ego is absurd. They would tell you like, no, that's not the point. The point is not to feel better. That's not the point. The point is not that. And so the left-hand perspective of this is not that the goal is to eradicate your ego. The goal is to integrate your ego, to integrate the delusion. So everybody that goes to a Buddhist temple, not everybody, but a lot of people go to Buddhist temples, they want to escape the illusion. They think that is the goal. And they will spend their life rocking back and forth in front of a wall trying to achieve that. And it's one of the greatest, and it's not a scam in the negative sense. It's not a scam like, oh, we're doing this to rip people off and make money off them. It's a scam in the way like that Mr. Miyagi would do to Daniel's son when he makes him do the thing wrong 100 times just so that he can learn the right way in the process.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly
it is.
What that is. And at least in my experience. I'm not going to say I'm some kind of Buddhist expert and I've been to those temples and I've actually done that practice and I know all about it. But in my experience in similar practices, that's exactly what that is. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So like while you got these guys going staring at a wall, the guys come around whacking them with sticks, while the master, if he really is a master, is sitting there going, these guys are idiots. And he's like watching his TV show, right? Because he knows that that's not how you achieve it. That's just a thing you do as your penance because you think you need to. And that was an Alan Watts gift to me. When Alan Watts said something to that effect, I was like, of course I knew that. Of course, this is so stupid. You can't achieve enlightenment by sitting there staring at a rock. That's not what does it. That's because you're not there yet. You're not ready to accept that you're already that. You're not ready to go within and see that everything you need is already there. you still think it's somewhere outside that you've got to achieve to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's similar to
everybody
saying
listening
that,
to me, if you did it right, you could snap your fingers and wake up just like that. It's really that
Exactly.
simple.
Yeah, that's similar to saying that ritual is a way to achieve power through distraction, right?
Yes,
Instead
yes,
of
yes,
just
yes.
being able to dial it in and think of it, we have to go all these steps around every which way that we think that we have to, manipulate or at least fulfill natural laws so that we can embody the inner laws and make them outward and a shape and affect our three-dimensional reality, when in actuality that's all a distraction. There's just a main line there,
We're kind of like the palm of a hand trying to become the back of the hand, and we don't realize that it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We think I got to act more like the back of my hand, and we start trying to contort backwards, and it doesn't work, and it's just it's an ignorance. So, what do you think, honey? I know that you're sitting there with Mothman, and Mothman looks pretty freaking cool. Actually, we didn't show off Mothman. We should give those guys some
That
free
is cool. I
publicity.
didn't know that's what that was. That's dope.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about trying to do some attempts to reach out to that egregore and see what I can find. But yeah, that's a statue of the Mothman that was made by a company on Etsy, I think called Della Morte or something like
Della Morte, yeah. They do some
Della Morte.
even this is their candle holders too.
Yeah, tentacle.
I don't know,
holders
I
and
can't
everything.
see, it's kind of dark in here, so I don't know
it's showing up good.
on camera with it.
Yeah, no, you got it. It's good.
I love my tentacles, so I got those. I got a lot of shit from them, actually.
I know you're like their number one customer in the house. You got my that one cup, the skull cup for me.
I think I spent $400 in 1 month.
Interesting that it's become an egregore, because I always thought that was alien in nature.
I mean,
Okay.
that's an egregore. Everything's an egregore, brother. That
I know.
egregore is tulpa, and tulpa is egregore. That's everything. Everything is egregore and tulpa. But I've started to. Yes, Cole Smith says you're an egregore technically. Absolutely, that's right. You fucking are. So Cole Smith was asking who you were. I just realized this is Brandon Knight. I guess we can say that. I mean, you're the author of that book. I hope I didn't just blow. If people are going to come to your house now, yeah, it says it on your thing. Whoops. Whew. I thought people were going to come to his door with pitchforks now. He's the author of a book. Actually, more than just that. He's the author of a book, two people are the authors, but he's one of the authors of a book, Spells for the Modern Mystic, a ritual guidebook and spellcasting kit. And he's actually, quite a professional guy. Like he said, he had his own, whatchamacallit, I don't know if you call it a cult shop, but a spiritual shop. And you started kind of an industry down there. You kind of blew it up for yourself. So, yeah, absolutely. So that's who he is, Cole, and that's why we have him on. He's a friend of mine from a while back, and I figured he'd be an interesting guest to have on. He was going to be on a few weeks ago, but something happened and came up at the last minute, and we were like, uh-oh, I hope he's okay. And well, he's back. He's back. Brandon lives, everyone. Brandon's back. Let's, Camilla, let's go through some of the questions. Since you're talking so much, I'm going to shut you up for a minute. Let's go through some of the questions if we have any. But,
we have questions.
So aim at one you'd like the answer to, or one that you'd like to answer. Actually, be even better.
Okay. This is from Sky. She's actually got. I think it's a she. Sorry. This is actually like two questions. Hey guys, can I have some advice? My uncle stole my cat, a familiar, and I think he took him to a shelter. I want to get him back, but I'm not sure how. I'm searching through shelters currently.
Okay. I'm going to let you start with that because I'm going to say something that hopefully won't make them unhappy. But go ahead.
Who, me?
Brandon, go. Either one. Either one of you guys can start this one.
I'm not good with advice like that.
Okay. All right. Brandon.
All right. So when it comes to familiar, well, I mean, number one, if your uncle stole your cat, then they might not be your familiar.
That's actually almost what I was going to say was going to be the keep going, Brandon.
Yeah, a familiar is going to be a familiar that has the influence of a major spirit over it, or a close spirit that is yours and almost like a kin spirit to you, is going to find a way to stick around you. They're intelligent, right? They have an intelligence behind them. And so that intelligence will show up in the animal somehow. Some things might be able to happen to the animal, but they're going to find their way back to you, and they're certainly going to be adept enough to slip your uncle. So just an FYI on that. That's probably not your familiar. I don't want to discredit your experience. I don't want to invalidate anything, but just my experience, speaking from my experience personally, a familiar is not going to find a way to hang around. They're more powerful than that. So just an FYI for me.
Yeah, I think that's important because it actually helps answer the question. It's kind of like, I know it doesn't help. I know it doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how to deal with your uncle, except for there's some spirits you could call on, of course. There's a lot of spirits you can call on to try to somehow rectify that. Specifically, oh man, there's just one thing that I think the Ducante Connolly stuff really gets right is spirits actually do have a soft spot for animals. That's not to say that they won't harm them or anything. It's just that spirits they see differently than humans, and I've actually some spirits have when I've gone in the whole should I sacrifice an animal to you, they're like, please don't. We don't need that. Like, that's not what we need. They will take food though. That includes animals. So this is what it is. I think I want to touch these two things. I want to get back to the familiar part in a minute. Animal sacrifice. I'm not saying it has no place in magic. I'm not saying that. But I will say that most of the time what people think of as animal sacrifice in the West is not what it is. We think of animal sacrifice as we literally take this animal, kill it, and destroy it, and it's a waste. That's not usually how it's been in antiquity. It wasn't like that.
No, not at all.
There were exceptions where they might throw the whole animal in, but it would have been one of 100, and the rest of the animals would have went to feed the tribe or something, would feed the city or something like that. So generally, when something is sacrificed, you participate in the offering as the medium through which the offering goes. In other words, yes, there are traditions where you leave it all on the altar, but the ones that I practice and prefer are the ones where you partake in the offering because presumably the spirit is invoked into you and experiencing that visceral enjoyment of it with you, and you're not supposed to waste the offering. You can give it the skin, some of the meat, some of the this, some of that, but the animal sacrifice should not be wasted. And the one time I had an animal sacrificed in my name, I intentionally shifted the intention of that ritual to take that animal's egregore, its own identity, if it wanted me to give it a heavenly abode in my own astral space afterwards. So that, okay, fine, it's a sacrifice to me and it's going to get sacrificed anyway. I'll accept it because I'm going to try to treat that animal as a sacred being now and make it part of my temple. And it's now like an honored part of my temple. It's running around, this little chicken is running around my temple in my astral space. Occasionally I see it there. So anyway, back to the familiar thing. All right. So familiars, an animal is not a familiar. That's number one. The animal is not your familiar. No matter what Hollywood and Sabrina the Teenage Witch tells you, your cat is not your familiar. My dog is not my familiar. I don't care how occasionally it can seem like that. The familiar is a spirit, and the spirit is non-local. It can inhabit pretty much anything. My familiar is attached to this medallion. That's my familiar. Okay, this amulet, this skull, whatever you want to call it. This is where my main familiar is. It's not in an animal. I don't have to worry about it dying. If I lose it, I know that familiar is done with me. I upgrade it from time to time. I give it a home. I do this and that. I do ritual with it. I give it offerings. This is the housing for the familiar. Now, does that mean that my familiar will never enter my dog? I don't think so, because there's times when animals will look at us and there's a twinkle in your eye and you're like, there's something smart there for a moment. And it'll go away and they'll poop on a rug. But for a minute, they'll be like, I'm looking at you. You're like, I know that look. I know that look. That's the familiar shining through your pet. So I know it's going to be disappointing to someone who, because here, having a pet is beautiful, but then to now make it your familiar makes it even more beautiful to you. It's making it harder, okay? And I know, I got to be have a little bit more empathy for you here, because here we are like pooping on this whole familiar thing, and that wasn't your point. Your point is, your beloved animal was taken from you.
That's right. Yeah.
And if there was a familiar involved with that animal, if there is a familiar that was riding that animal, the familiar is still with you, I think is what I'm really trying to get at.
Absolutely.
If there is a familiar, the familiar didn't leave. So the real issue, if we're gonna try to pull this apart, is not that the familiar was lost. Your familiar is still there. It's your beloved animal was taken from you. And that's, that's an issue that I don't think is going to get resolved. My intuition's telling me that's a done deal. I don't think that's going to get fixed. I think you're in a situation now where the only thing you got left is either integration of that issue and learning to grow from it, or to get your revenge for the whole thing. That would be what, that would be it. And revenge could be part of integration as long as you don't live with it. But familiars, as someone who, I'm not an expert on familiars, but they're one of my fortes are familiars. I'm telling you, familiar is not the animal. And I know a lot of the love and light witches and all these other people are screaming and hitting the dislike button right now because they know their pet cat Fluffy is their immortal familiar. But then some of them who know what they're talking about are going to go, oh wait, he's right. It's not my cat. My cat's a beloved soul. I love it. I'm not. See, this is the thing. If you think that diminishes your pet to say it's not your familiar, you don't love your pet. Just saying that. I'm being that Lucifer right now. If you look at your dog or your cat and you go, that's my familiar, I know it is, it has to be because I love it. You wouldn't love it if it wasn't your familiar then? What's wrong with you? What kind of inhuman piece of shit are you? You wouldn't love it because it's not a familiar. That's all I'm saying. If that somehow demotes your animal companion to something less just because it's not a familiar, specifically, examine yourself, because I think that's what your problem is. And I'm not saying that's you, Sky, if you're still here. To be clear, someone asks a question, it gives me content. It's not that I don't care about you. And if you want better answers, you can contact me or Brandon for that matter. Yeah. And if you want potential solutions to that issue, feel free to contact us. I'm not unwilling to look into it.
There are rituals out there you can do to invite your familiar into an animal. There are,
exactly.
There's all kinds of options out there. I mean, the field is, with a capital F, the field is so wide, and there's so many options when it comes to working with spirits and energies. S. Connolly has a great, if in one of her books, I can't remember, I've read almost all of her books, but S. Connolly has a really great ritual for inviting a familiar or a spirit to inhabit a pet of yours. So you can look that up. There's
invite
so many
both of
out
them.
there.
They both have to be willing.
Yep. Yeah.
People make a big to-do about possession being forceful. In my experience, there's no such thing as a forceful possession. It's always willing possession. It's always
only willing. That's correct. And even the possessions that quote unquote look bad or whatever it is, there's something that the host is getting out of that possession. That's the reason why that's happening. Absolutely. In fact, that's something that was one of the first things that I did in my coming out as a magician publicly, was to comment on a possession issue. In the two possessions, I know it doesn't make me an expert, but the two possessions that I dealt with growing up, in both cases, the spirit was actually there acting out, doing all these horrible things as a way, number one, to balance the energy. That was number one, the emotional energy and problems. And as a way to get attention on the actual problem. The problem of in this case, it was a sexual abuse and a drug abuse issue on the other one. It brought those things to the front because the person couldn't hide it anymore. So you deal with the problem, the spirit often goes away. That's right.
So, I mean, I'm living proof of that. I got possessed every day when I was a kid. Yeah. Now, only if I ask, and even then.
Exactly. So, and that, that on the note of animal sacrifice too, a comment on that just a little bit, if you don't mind. The thing about animal sacrifice and the traditions that actually have them. So, say for instance, voodoo and some of the Caribbean traditions or island traditions, and some of the African traditions, and some of the old shamanic European traditions and things like that.
I think all traditions have something somewhere, right?
All forms have some form, but because in the old world, what it was is that when you sacrifice something, it wasn't just to purely offered up as some kind of token to a spirit. It was actually a means to integrate and transmute in that moment the energy and the soul of the animal, or the essence of the animal, so it can transform itself. It's like a gift to the animal too. They understood it as something that at a foundational level, hey, we're going to help this being transform and change, become more of an egregore of itself, so it can be something more when we sacrifice.
It's an upgrade. Right.
Yes.
Well, just like with a human being, if you get sacrificed to a god, you're thought of as special.
When it happened.
Sorry, man. Go ahead. Sorry, I thought I was just gonna. It was only one sentence I want to say, but I'm good. I said it. Go ahead.
Okay.
I have a bad habit.
I mean that, and so that's the place of animal sacrifice. It's actually a very, very sacred thing, and it's actually in the benefit of the animal as well. In those traditions, I understand. We might have some vegans on here or whatever that are like, oh my god, or anything like that. But in the time and in the traditions that they're in, you got to respect those traditions and their viewpoint, right? And understand where they're coming from, and I have no doubt that a collective belief system is going to change the reality. And so a collective belief system of a lot of people all believing the same thing at once, believing that they're going to transform the essence of this animal when they actually sacrifice it, right? And the spirit that's involved actually gets involved in transforming the essence of that animal and being for its benefit and for the benefit of the tribe, right? Then it's going to actually happen. It happened that way.
And again, most of the time that sacrifice was enjoyed. Most of that time it was.
That's right.
Even if it was sacrificed, a portion of it went to feed the tribe. It wasn't, in some cases, in all brutal honesty, the slaying was the sacrifice, the eating was the part that you got. So it was actually an excuse to eat some meat that week, okay, in some cases. Because a lot of the times when animal sacrifice flourished, it was in places where it was mostly grain societies, and they didn't have a lot of meat, and you would save your meat for once a month, special occasions, when you could afford it, whatever. So the priests would say, everyone's looking skinny and the warriors aren't very strong because they're not getting enough red meat. Let's take one of the cattle and sacrifice it, and we'll make an offering. And that's what it, a lot of the times, I'm telling you, that's a lot of times what it was.
That's what it was, totally.
Yeah, so, and it still is that way. So, I mean, look at a bloat. Look at the northern traditions with bloats. You're supposed to share in the offerings that you give to your ancestor spirits. You're not supposed to just leave all the food on the table. How many kids here were Christian or not Christian, but you had Santa Claus? Did you or did you not eat some of the cookies that you left for Santa Claus? At least one or two, right? You left him one, maybe two. You were always greedy. Here's a plate of cookies, Santa. Hum, hum, hum. Here's one. So the offering is always within yourself too. So Wyatt said something, and he said something. He asked a good question, although he might misunderstand my perspective on it. He says, "Hey DH, don't you think it'd be sort of mean to an animal to make it share a physical form with another being? Having two souls in one isn't always great chemistry." I have a two-part answer for that, but I want your take on it first, Brandon, since you're probably going to say a lot of the same things. I want you to go for it. Actually, I'm going to shut up. Camilla, are you still here?
I'm here.
I keep doing that to you because you know what's happening? Brandon's picture is the only one up. I got to keep clicking this. Sorry, sweetie. Do you have anything to say about what I've been ranting about for the last 40 minutes?
I don't really have too much experience with familiars.
Okay.
Other than the little egregore that I subsequently created because of wanting a cat, so...
Yeah, you pretty much have just been focusing on cats so much you just start seeing little shadow cats all over the place now, so that's pretty interesting.
Work.
Mm-hmm.
I brought it home from work over the winter. It followed me home, and it's been running around the bedroom, and I know I've heard it scratching on things, so I'm still in the process of making an anchor for it. I just have to perfect it. Trying to like really bad carpal tunnel, so.
It's that knitting thing. Knitting is not always easy. And dolls make excellent anchors for spirits, by the way, guys.
Man, do they ever. Holy smokes. Jeez.
Yeah.
So I'm putting a lot of energy to it, and I know that because of how certain things are, it actually has my own hair in it too, because yarn likes to pick up hair, so I use that as like a little bonus to the whole thing.
And I mean, there was someone I had, I don't know if she was on or not, but I've talked to her in the past. She was someone I used to talk with more, but I don't really so much more. She was making really nice antique dolls, and she'd put, mojo pouches in them, crystal pouches, all kinds of stuff to enhance their energy that they had in them. So
that's essentially what I'm doing with mine, and it's actually going to be once I get things all set, it's actually going to be I'm going to be communing with Leviathan for it, because it's going to be like an emotional support kind of thing. I've talked about it in another stream, and what's intended, I'm going to fill the head with lavender, like a lavender sachet, because lavender is soothing and calming. And the body's going to have, like right in the neck, there's going to be a little pouch, and it's going to have a chunk of bloodstone, obsidian, and amethyst. And essentially what you do is you breathe in the lavender and you breathe out into the stone all the negativity and shit from the day. And it's actually a tentacle cat. It's got tentacles on its back. And it's all black. So, like, the tentacles, it pulls it all in. It takes all your shit from the day and it eats it. It's like a vacuum.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Obsidian's like a good energy air freshener. It's, you know, a lot of people think, oh, it blocks and wards. No, in my experience, it actually doesn't do that. It's not like a smoky quartz that just kind of absorbs it. It's more like an air freshener. It's kind of like, it's like hitting one of those big old Christmas trees in your car, but putting it in your spiritual aura. And that's kind of what it does. It's like charcoal. Think of it like charcoal. It is an absorber, I guess, in that case, but it's like charcoal in a water filter. It doesn't destroy anything. It just resets it so that it's balanced again back towards neutral. So it doesn't make it positive, doesn't make it negative. It's just kind of like black clothing that absorbs all the light. It does that. It kind of like sucks up all of that stuff and re-emits just neutral heat. Okay, just neutral energy again.
Yeah.
So okay,
perfect that you put some bloodstone in there too, because that transmutes trauma to love. It's perfect, man. That's awesome. It's really good.
Google is your friend if you're learning gems. By the way, every time I'm in the New Age shop, I pick up a gem I don't know. Boop boop boop. That sounds interesting, and I just trust the first thing that catches my eye. I trust that is the one that's right. So let's go back to that question that Wyatt asked Brandon. So let's unless Camilla wants to dance on that first, but let's turn it over to you. Why don't you think it'd be sort of mean to an animal to make it share a physical form with another being? ? Having two souls in one isn't always great chemistry. So I have several very maybe two analytical ways to describe that. I have two answers for it, but I want you to go first because I trust you're going to have a pretty good one too, and
sure.
I'd rather keep mine in reserve in case. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, any spirit that I've ever worked with, and any spirit that I know of, wouldn't force itself on a soul that wouldn't want it. That doesn't happen. You'd have to create an egregore that would be of your own making and have a lot of expertise to force something on another soul, as far as possession or at least even influence. And hardly anybody that I know of alive that I've read of authors or anything has that kind of skill. Like, that would be very, very hard to overcome.
A lot of that would be psychological. You'd have to trick them. You'd have to break their will. You'd have to.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like
so
easy
much
to do.
to it. It would be so complex, and there's no way that you could be able to do that. So first of all, an animal would never, unless the animal is receptive, the soul, the spirit wouldn't be able to do it anyway. And animals are very, at a base level, foundation level, they're very pure, and so they don't have like the different identities and psyche plays and able to maneuver inside like what we do, right? And so we get like shadow possessed or whatever it is. We think we're not possessed, but we are, and we get something out of it, and all these different things like what DH was talking about earlier, where it exposes trauma and things like that. That doesn't happen with animals. Animals at a very base level, whenever they experience trauma, they shake until they get the trauma out of their body. That's an animal, right? And so very, very simple. And so that would be a very hard thing to possess unless you're a spirit of great power and have, or you have a deal made with a whole lineage of animals or something like that as a spirit. You wouldn't be able to do that. You can't overpower an animal. Everything's going to have to be consensual, right. At least from my understanding of everything and my experience of spirits and animals.
I mean, and the thing with animals again is like, since they are so pure, they might also be just as willing to accept it because they don't see
That's
it
right.
as like, they don't have the hang up that we have where, oh my God, it's a demon. They're like, oh, pretty, like, oh, that's it. Because they're mostly about emotion and feelings, and their thought processes are alien to us, so they're hard to describe. But I know that when I look at my animals, the communications that work best with them are emotional and of course body language, but it's emotion oriented, right? That's how
energetic.
That's how they relate.
So it's about energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're more they're not going to see King Paimon as King Paimon. They're not going to see a camel riding in with a dude on the back with a crown. They're just going to feel this jovial joy. Like maybe they're going to feel like your cat's going to feel like you just gave him a can of tuna or something like that, and be like, oh, yeah, okay. So okay, let me put on Big Thorne hat for a minute and sort of. So number one, like what you said, not a problem. They're in my experience, and again, don't want to discredit other people's experiences because maybe it was important to you to believe that you were forced, but spirits don't force themselves on anything. It doesn't work that way. As my last couple of shows I keep bringing up, I'm going to bring it up again here. The understanding of a soul or a spirit, in my opinion, is pretty much wrong as people think of it. So I've been going around a lot lately talking in my streams about this Superman versus you question. What is the difference between you and Superman? Which one of you is more real? And I know some of you are probably turning off the video already because I've talked about this 2 or 3 times already, but it's an important question. What is truly more real about you than Superman? Nothing. There's nothing more real about you or Superman. You're both equally delusional. You're both equally not real. The thing is that you are identified with a blob of meat, and so therefore you think you're more real because if you reach your hand out, stuff happens. But Superman may be disembodied, but he's no less real than you are. Everybody knows Superman. Everybody interacts with Superman. Superman has influenced far more people than you ever will. So by every measurement we can possibly give it, short of a physical body, he's more real than you. But we can take it one more level up from that, and we can say, your body is a collection of cells. Each one of those cells is no less or no more real than the body. In fact, to a cell, the body is a weird abstract idea. It doesn't make any sense. Yes, I'm part of a collective of cells, but what does that even mean? I'm still a cell. Like that body's not more real than me. I'm more real than the body because obviously here I am. So Superman is like the body. And I use Superman because it's the most ridiculous egregore I can think of, by the way. That's the only reason I use him. The Superman is like the totality of the body with a mind on top of it somewhere. The physicalness would be, the cells would be like each one of us imagining him. Each one of us has an idea of him, basically makes him bigger, okay? Makes him stronger, bigger, and more complex, okay? Just like all of our cells make us stronger and bigger and more complex. So what I want you to understand when you're asking about two souls, there is no separation between souls. All souls are essentially egregore. They're essentially ideas. They're tulpa. They're Atman. They are literally an idea of distinction. They're a distinction made from other things that are distinct from each other. They're the left from the right, the up from the down. The left is an egregore, the right is a spirit, the up is a spirit, the bottom is a spirit. Each one of those is basically what we mean, because in English we have we have a very, I'm sorry, but no language has a good language for what we're trying to say. But part of the problem is because a lot of these words are taken by pop culture and superstitious people and ignorant people and misused and misappropriated, misunderstood, that it's almost like, and maybe I should do it, I don't think anybody would buy it, but I should write a new dictionary of terms that corrects what I think they should mean to help. Because I think when people talk about spirit, if I ask someone who believes in a spirit or a soul, and I ask them, what is that? 99% of the people I ask aren't going to have a real answer. They're just going to be like, well, it's who you really are. What is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? What is a soul? What is a soul? Well, it has 5 parts. What do they mean? And or 4 parts or 3 parts or whatever lineage they come from that says X number of parts. And it's just more gobbledygook that doesn't have much foundation. Now there is a foundation you can reach for. You can get a rational foundation if you're willing to put aside the things that are the superstitious thing. Not to say you shouldn't use them. I mean, Brandon, you know I use superstition all day long in my art because that's the art. That's the palette of color I like to paint with, is my superstitious. And when I say my superstition, I don't believe them. Like, I don't believe this candle does anything when I use it in magic. The candles, I can draw a picture of a candle and it'll do the same thing, right? It doesn't have to be a candle. So what's really happening is it's all tulpa and egregore. They're basically the same word, but they're used a little differently in most people's, lineages. But we're going to say tulpa and egregore are basically the same thing. We are all tulpa in the mind's eye of the divine itself. That's what we are. We're all an idea in God's mind, and God is also an idea in its own mind, so therefore it doesn't exist. So the idea that an animal has even one soul in the first place is wrong. That is not accurate. It's nice to say. It gives us warm fuzzies, and it gives us a mechanical thing to attach our magic to. It's a conceptual truth. In other words, I can say Brandon has a soul because he has separated himself into a bubble of Atman that he says this is what Brandon is. Whether he means to do it or not, it's just part of being here in this life. I've done the same thing. So I have created this Atman soul that I think I am. Okay? And your cat has done the same thing. And Superman has basically done the same thing. Or really, it's a cooperative effort. None of us, Brandon, are you self-created?
Yes.
How much of you is self-created?
Actually, when you ask that question, we like to think we're self-created, but I would say none of me is self-created. There's a portion of me, yes, we all like to think that we're willful, right? Mm-hmm. And that we create our lives and things like that. And that's the whole thing about nature versus nurture and, fate versus destiny and whether or not we do. But when you think about it, all you are is the amalgam of all the influence you've ever had in your life. And that's who you are. You've paid to have membership into the different organizations of information that run around your head. And that makes up who you are. You're an egregore of all of that. That doesn't make you self-made.
So, in the deep mystical, esoteric, non-dual tradition, nothing is self-made. Everything already is. So, in other words, there is no
Correct.
Self, but there is. So, it's like when someone says the reason why it's taboo to say I'm enlightened is because there's nobody to be enlightened in the first place.
Right.
There is enlightenment, but there is no I. So,
Right.
So with that context, I could say no, you're not self-created because there is no you. But I would say that you create your experience all the time as a delusion of Maya, that it's a reflection of the limitation you've made for yourself. You can do that. But let's move ontologically one step lower in the understanding. So if we come from on the highest perspective, no, nothing is created. Everything is.
Right.
We come a step down, everything is experienced, and then we create meaning in those experiences. That's step 3. And as the all-seeing eye creates that keyhole that it looks through, as it radiates down, as the source emanates itself into our experience, at some point we have a feeling of me. Okay, but that me that I think I am a participant in its creation. That is to say, I of course have ideas about me, but aren't those ideas always based upon what someone else told me to start with?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Didn't it start with your mother and father saying that you're their son or their daughter? Didn't it start with, someone saying you have blue eyes instead of brown? Didn't it start with all of these things? So this whole identity you think you have, this soul you think you have, it's a cooperative thing that has been done. It's a story. It's a story. It's a story that is made up. None of it has real valid truth to it. You can say that there's corresponding things. You can say, yeah, we call Brandon a male because he's biologically, genetically, gendered, whatever. He's a male. Okay, fair enough, but that doesn't mean Brandon is a male. Brandon doesn't exist. Brandon's a story, right? So let's say the same. Let's go back to our pet. Let's go back to Fufu. Fufu, as you think you know it, exists nowhere else in the universe except for in your mind. Okay? The Fufu that you think is the animal does not exist anywhere else outside of you. So that means what Fufu sees when it looks in a mirror is another cat, because they're dumb, they don't know that that's them. But if they could metaphorically look in a mirror and have self-awareness somehow, They would look at that and say, "Ah, that's me." And whatever you think they are is not what they would see. They see whatever they see. They see a cat version of themselves. The references that matter to cats. You look at a cat and say, "Wow, look at how big its ears are." And it might look at itself and be like, "Oh, look at how my coat is this color over here." Or so whatever turns cats on makes them think that whatever they key in on. Like look at another human. This is all, existential shit. But look at a human and look at the features that matter to you and ask yourself, why does it matter that they have eyes and nose and ears and all these things in the right places and proportions? Yet if I put and gave a human cat proportions, it would weird me the fuck out. It would be wrong somehow, right? Or it would turn me on because I'm into furries. But you know what I'm saying? It would be different. There would be a different. So when you're looking at foo-foo and you're thinking it's got a soul, the soul that you're thinking of is the one you've made in your own mind. So you've already done what you just said shouldn't be done. You've already overlaid another soul on that cat, okay? Or that animal, whatever it is. So what's the difference from that to now saying that that's also the host for a familiar too? What's the difference? The cat, in its own cat world, probably won't ever... That's the other side of the coin of possession. The cat may never know the difference. The cat will go through its life being a cat. And when it looks at you and I say, I feel like I'm looking at another supreme consciousness looking at me through the cat might just be like, are you going to feed me or what? And I think it's a spirit looking at me. It's a synchronistic moment. So which is true? This is the nature of this stuff that drives me both insane, but it's also part of the joy, because I too love the superstitious perspective of that's another spirit in the cat and I'm looking at it, or that there's literally a spirit in this amulet. The spirit's in here. It's not in here. The spirit's not in this. This thing I could throw it across the room and it would never matter again. It's just an object. But I have taken the familiar spirit that I associate with this, and when I see this is where it is. And when I look at this, I think of it. So it means that's where it lives. A lot of this is metaphorical and allegorical. People will sometimes misunderstand, and this is what drives me crazy, that means that none of this is real. No, it's deadly real.
It's deadly real.
It's just not these superstitious forms we think it is. That's the lie, right? But there is truth behind it. There's something deeper, and that is the thing where it's like, you know what it is? It's like my tongue exists in the three-dimensional world, but the thing I'm trying to do with my tongue requires that it move in 7 directions at the same time, in 7 dimensions. And I can't make my tongue wiggle that way, and so I can't explain it. In my mind, I can't envision it. But in my being, I know it to be true, because it's filtering through, and I feel like I'm taking a round peg and forcing it through a square hole. It squishes, but it's like it comes out square. It doesn't come out the way it really is. So, yeah, I'm gonna shut up now. We're gonna move on a little bit, because I'm gonna get way too crazy. So, unless you have something you want to add to that, Brandon, I'm gonna move on to another question.
No, it's fine, man. I think you're right on with all that. I mean, the fact that I want to go back to how people, might talk about, well, if everything you're saying is sometimes when you read DH's work or you hear him talk I'm talking to the audience now, you might get the impression, man, none of this is real. It's all in my head. But that isn't what DH is saying. What DH is saying is that what is in your mind is the realest thing. What you can focus on and what you can think of and what you can grasp in your reality from here is where it begins. It's like coming from the void in a way. And so that's what makes it real. It's very deadly real from there.
The thing is, like, there is no real or unreal. They're all equally delusional.
Exactly.
And so if I say it's not real, that doesn't mean it's not there. If I say it is real, that doesn't mean it is there. It's real is a spectrum of just like anything in non-dualism, there is no separation. So that means the real and the unreal are the same.
The same.
Okay. But there is, when I say they're the same, so the misunderstanding of non-dualism is that there's no distinction. Of course there's distinction. That's the point, is that it's like a rainbow. You can go all the way this way and all the way that way in the spectrum and think that you're seeing two opposite ends of something and go, red is nothing like blue, but they actually all contain the same light. It's just a different vibration of that light. And even the vibration, the idea of vibration is on a spectrum of big and small, and they're all the same energy. They're all the same. So eventually you get to a singular core of what is, and you have no words for it anymore because you realize that any word is just a distinction, and the distinction is not the source.
Right.
You know. So yeah, Shaman gave us a heads up. He said, Shaman, have a great night, all the brothers and sisters out there. Thank you, Shaman. That's a very generous donation. Thank you, brother. I hope you're doing well. I know you got your new job. I hope you're doing really good. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. That was very generous. Everybody give Shaman a round of applause. Camilla, show him the shirt.
If I have light now, my candles have dwindled down to nothing.
Just don't put your hair in the candle. We'll be fine.
I shall try.
Nah, it's not working. No, don't burn yourself. But we got the shirts made, guys. We got the Crowley shirt made.
Am I in the shot? I can't tell.
Yeah, you're in the shot.
Yeah.
Magic is stored in the butt. That's an inside joke, Brandon. You might not be aware of that inside joke. There's actually, you know, the story of when Crowley went into the desert and invoked Karanzan into himself, or whoever it was into himself, and his friend Neuberg was in the circle. Well, then they had like supposedly wild, passionate, sexy butt sex at that moment. So that's why we have magic is stored in the butt, because it was a funny moment in my streams, and it became a meme. So actually, it wasn't from us though. That actually came from last podcast on the left. And I think hopefully they'll find out and come after me. But yeah, so let's go to another question. Unless you have a comment, sweetie. You have anything you want to say? And by the way, you can get that shirt on my Teespring. Go in the description of this video. Go to the link tree and go to the Teespring. It's one of the first things you should see. There is a link to that shirt. Thank you, Nina. Nina is the best. By the way, Nina, I can't wait to be on your show. I think we'll aim for early April, like you said. So I can't wait to do an interview with you. Thank you, Nina.
I would love to see
also,
that.
Nina, oh my God, I forgot. You had asked me about that one product you want to talk about. I want to talk to you about that. I want to get you on my show or something, and we'll talk about that. Or put a link to it. Put a link to it here for people to see. Nina has a new water that she's putting out. Give it a look, everybody. And I really want to support her because she does a lot of stuff for us. And absolutely she never asked for anything. So, I mean, if I could, I'd throw you something. You were the first one to volunteer.
It's a spray, correct?
Yeah, it's a new spray that she's putting out. And I'm not into sprays, so I didn't jump on it because I don't use them. They're just not what I'm into. But I'm sure it's something good because Nina's a good egg, and I would trust her to put
spray. She experienced a really good spray. It's the shit. It's awesome. So yeah, I have no doubt she's going to put out some good stuff. That'd be awesome.
Thank you, Nina. Yes, everybody go to Nina the Mystic. Check her out. And I'm proud of her. She's been helping out Wayne R. Steiger, who that man is another, like, he's another one that, like, I mean, I don't know if he's got it all figured out or not, but that motherfucker knows a lot. He studies and researches. I actually learned things from him about ball that he really helped me out watching some of his videos on ball. So, Nina, you're often helping him out last I saw. So, yeah. So, all right, Camilla, unless you've got something you want to bring up, do we have any more questions?
We do have more questions.
Okay.
This one is also from Sky. I'm interested in karmic curses, but don't know much about them. Can you share any experience you have with those?
Probably for the same reason as talking about the familiar, my guess. To answer that question, we're going to kind of destruct karma a little bit, probably to do it right. But Brandon, I'm going to put you on this. I'm going to put you on the first pass of this. So.
You said me to go the first pass on it?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna.
Karmic curses. So that's interesting, right? To me, that's along the same lines as like lineage curses and things like that, because karma is often passed down in the lineage. But you know, there is a concept that there is no such thing as karma, and I have to say that, you know, karma is only real if you believe in it, and karmic curses are, I don't know exactly what you're referring to, Scott, in that question. I'd have to drill down just a little bit with you to understand what you're asking there, because there's several different ways you can define a karmic curse, right? So I don't know exactly unless you're talking about a lineage type of situation where it's passed down the family, or where you're born with a curse of some kind, something like that. If that's what you're talking about, then yes, I do think I have experienced my clients and people that I've worked with having the real experience of a karmic curse, quote unquote, right? I don't know exactly if it's what people think in the tradition of karma, right, of what it actually is, but it's a curse that is actually lodged in their being, right, and in their DNA, and it's passed down generationally from belief systems that are passed down that way, right, that were influenced this particular way through magic and energy and pushed and pulled and manipulated in certain directions. And so they do exist, and there are ways to unravel them, but I would have to know more about specifically what you're talking about to truly answer the question. But I do have some experience with that kind of quote unquote curse and things being passed down in the lineage that way. But I'd like to hear DH's, take on it in general to understand a little bit more of the direction he's going with it to be able to expand on it a little bit more.
Sure. And that's the other thing. That's why I keep, I'm one of those, like you said before, DH isn't saying it's not real. He's just destructing your illusion of it a little bit. I can't stand when people believe the literal superstition. That is to say, superstition is a valid tool, just like it's a meme, it's a theme, it's a trope, and that's how we communicate. And they're valuable for that reason. They're very powerful egregores, and we should use them. I use candles for magic because they're very powerful egregores. But we have to separate the superstitious hokey pokey bunky bullshit from the reality, because that's part of how the powers that be control you from having your power.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
They've turned you on to the superstitious belief of magic, thinking it's got to be Hollywood and Harry Potter, and when it's not that, you go, well, I guess I can't control my reality at all, and you go off into your miserable life as a slave again. If you understand how this really works, you're not even a slave even if you do that. You understand you're an enlightened, infinite being already, and they can't stop you from doing anything you want. The only thing that stops you is the fact that you've decided to have this life. That's it. They can't put you in this box. You put yourself in it. That's because you need the box, and it's okay to be in a box. It's not even wrong to be in one. That's the other part of the equation. You got to realize even the bad part is a good part. So anyway, karma literally means action. It's basically causality in the non-dual sense. Okay, and the problem with it is, depending upon your spectrum of non-duality, you either understand time is an illusion, and that means causality and linearity is also a delusion, or you accept that there's some kind of, at least, rationality for why. Now, I am both. I believe that time is an illusion, but we experience it intentionally as part of the Maya delusion. We are consciousness exploring ourselves, and we do this linearly, because if we didn't, it would all happen at once and it wouldn't be fun. So we take it, like, you don't go down a slide all at the same time. You go down a slide a little bit at a time. Otherwise, a slide is just you're at the top and then at the bottom at the same time. It's not fun. So you have to ride the slide for it to be fun. And that's what your consciousness is doing. So karma is the timeline, if you will, through the Akash, right? Through Akashic record. That's what it is. And it is not a system of justice. It is not a system of when I say it's cause and effect, that does not mean that you can't change it at any time.
That's right. Yeah.
Karma is not permanent, and it is not a thing that you've got to deal with. Okay? Karma can be changed instantaneously. The thing is, karma means that you probably won't. That's the thing. So my karma is to be enlightened now in this way, this little way that I'm enlightened, supposedly. But obviously I'm not a disembodied being flying through space right now, living the life of that kind of a god, because my karma is not to be that. So my karma is to be here right now talking to you guys. There is no such thing as good karma or bad karma. It is literally just, this is the path you're on. Okay, now when you have a bad day, when something bad happens to you, you're in a delusion because you think something bad is happening to you. You're already in a delusion because you think that. But when these events are happening, that is your karma. And your karma is that way because that watcher, as you said before, that is sort of the big eye behind everything, that's the keyhole that it's made for you. It's made that little triangle for you to look through. And so that's where it's guiding that perception. In other words, karma is not the perception, but what the perception is aimed at. And it's aimed at things in a way that will create the most fulfilling experience for your egregore at any given moment.
Yeah.
So, yes, Coda says a very wise thing. He says karma is a way for people to consciously nope out of their divinity and say, karma, take the wheel. Yes, it is. It's like justice. It's like this idea of cosmic justice. That's how most people use it. And it's just another delusional, oh, poor me thing for them. Oh, my karma sucks. That's why I'm just constantly miserable. No, your karma doesn't suck. Nobody's karma sucks. Your karma's fine. So what is a karmic curse? Well, in my perspective, after what I just said to you, first of all, the idea is kind of silly. You can't curse a karma. But what I would say is that the closest thing to a karmic curse would be doing something such that the person that you're trying to curse becomes influenced into a course of karmic action, which will cause them more challenges in the future. And strictly speaking, and when I say in the future, I mean probably in the next lifetime.
Correct.
Is what we're talking about. Now,
that's
now
why
of course,
I went to generational understanding of it.
Now, the problem with the idea of lifetime stuff is, Brandon, I know I'm you right now. I know I'm you right now. But you're also a past and former lifetime that I've lived. Okay? You and I, there is no future life. There is no future at all. That's the part of reincarnation that's bullshit. The part that I don't think fits in the non-dual center where it came from, because it comes from that. So reincarnation, that's why we say escape the cycle of samsara, because that's the reincarnation cycle. Because when you recognize that I am the hub of the wheel, not the spokes, not the wheel, and I'm the whole thing even, I'm rotating around myself and I think that I'm spinning. When you realize that, you go, I'm not reincarnating at all. I am always in the center of the wheel. Always, no matter where I am.
Right.
So there is no reincarnation. The thing that reincarnates is the egregore of self. So when your body dies, that egregore is going to still be there. People are still going to be thinking about you. It's still going to be knowing you. It's still going to be, for many years, people are going to know my name. Probably a lot longer than they would have, because I wrote several books that'll be popular enough probably that when I'm dead, someone will still be reading them. So someone will know who I am far into the future. That egregore of me will exist, and someone could contact it necromantically. However, 10,000 years from now, when my books are long gone and my work is long forgotten, D.H. Thorne will probably be forgotten too, unless I did something huge like Alexander the Great or something. My egregore will have dissolved at that point, and then I will be properly free. This is one of the reasons why people who are materialistic tend to have more vengeful spiritual natures after they're done, because they're still attached to this world because everyone knows who they are. People who just completely detach from the world and say, I'm just going to go die on a mountaintop somewhere, and not... They actually probably liberate themselves much more easily than everybody else. So when you're still this egregoric idea and you're still consciously attuned to it, okay, that conscious awareness can go, you know what, I'm tired of being a ghost. There's no sense of time. It's basically just dreaming all day long. Let me go and reincarnate as another person, and let me have another lifetime, or think I am anyway. And it will potentially go to another one. Now, again, this is all superstitious gaminess that I'm saying to you. I don't even think that's accurate. I think that's just one way to look at it. I don't even think that that's what happens. I think that that's just another story that I tell because I'm still trapped in this me delusion more than I could be, right? So I don't have any illusion to the idea that when I die, I'm necessarily going to go to a heaven or a hell. I think that we are all in heaven and hell right now. I think we're all reincarnated right now. We're constantly reincarnating. And people will say to me when I say that, well, Thorne, how do you know that you're Brandon? Can you tell me what Brandon's thinking right now? My response is, I can't tell you what I was thinking yesterday at this time. What makes you think I can tell what I was thinking when I was Brandon over there? Okay. The idea that I should know what Brandon knows right now implies that my knowing is currently where he is. It is, but the knowing is not memory. Memory experiences the knowing. Excuse me, reverse that. The knowing experiences the memories. The memories are a thing that
memory, yeah.
Yeah. So the knowing is over here right now. The knowing is looking at this guy. It's the needle on the record, and it's on the D.H. Thorne track. That needle is also running on the Brandon track and all those tracks at the same time, but it's only really paying attention to this one spot right now. Okay, so it's the Ouroboros eating its tail. The Ouroboros eats its tail. That means all it tastes is the tip of its tail at any given time. Yes, it's constantly growing into his mouth, so he's always tasting a new part of himself. But he only is aware of the tip of his tail that he's eating at that particular moment. That is to say, he only knows what that part tastes like. Well, Brandon and I are part of the same Ouroboros, however you like to pronounce it. I'm eating DH Thorne right now. So that's that. So karma is this idea that karma only exists if you're separated. How about that? Karma only can exist if you're separate from your true self. So long as you're an identified ego, egregore being, and that's what you think you are, karma will matter to you. The moment you recognize that's not what you are, karma starts to lose all coherent, real meaning, and it stops working on you.
Well, it's either that or be completely free of regret.
Yes,
if
yes.
You're completely
Regret.
free of regret, which is a very, very advanced state that hardly anybody gets to, or you could be a psychopath.
I think I'm closer to psychopath because I don't have a lot of regrets, but like I don't hesitate to be a psychopath. I'm proud of it.
That's where it is. I mean, and to Sky, speaking to you directly, there is a place where these things can be created in people's lives. It isn't that you can just philosophize yourself outside of a belief structure that's inherited and just totally get out of it, in that way. You might not be at that point. That's okay. Your family lineage might not be at that point. That's okay too. But what D.H. Thorne is saying is completely true. Karma essentially is just a timeline. There's no way you can curse a timeline. A timeline is something that's kind of infinite, that goes in all directions, and it has nothing to do with curses. But you can experience something in your family lineage that feels like a curse that is inherited from one person to another, and that is something that's a little different than a karmic curse. And if that's what you're talking about, then if you think that you're under that or something like that, which I highly doubt that you are, but if you think that you are, you can contact me afterwards and we could walk through it or whatever you would like, and I can show you, how you might actually be in it or not, and try to get your belief structure to the point where you could release it. But that's the only way that you can get out of it, is releasing the belief structure. Now, some people require a ritual to do that. Some people don't. Some people can just let go of it with their mind. But that's the whole point. There is room to experience it. There is room to have it as an experience, but it actually doesn't exist.
So we missed a super from Shaman, and thank you, Cole, for bringing that up. Oh, go ahead.
I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, I got sidetracked with the chat, so I wasn't sure if it was mentioned or not. We got a super chat from Shaman. I particularly like your triangular mirrors. I built my temple with several of your products. Thank you. Blessings unto all.
How's the big one? Is it out here or is it in there? I think it's out here.
In front of you.
I'm not going to get it because I have to detach from everything to do it, but damn, I hope you put more of those out. I hope you put those out in the first place, because that... What's that?
Do you want me to get it?
No. We'll just...
Okay.
For people who don't know, we've got like a big mirror that's just gorgeous. We'll put up posts of it sometime soon.
I have enough works right now.
Yeah. I love the big ones because she's doing stuff with clay on them now. She's putting tentacles all over. But Shaman, thank you. Again, thank you for your generosity, and I'm glad you're doing that. I mean... when we started making those mirrors, they were based on the design out of Shadownomicon, and my wife's like, well, what could we do? I bet you I can make this nicer. What about putting real, I know it's better if it's not better, but I know it'd be nice if it was made of real obsidian and blah, blah, blah. Well, what if I took obsidian, pebbles and, obsidian gravel and put it, and I'm like, that's brilliant. I never thought of that. And so that became your side hustle, is making those mirrors, and that's why we can actually afford to go out to eat once a week again. So it's nice. Burger King, mind you, we're not doing that well, but we can do it. No, I'm kidding, guys. We're not that bad off. So thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. So, any comments on any of that or questions that you could throw at us?
There are more questions if you're looking for questions.
I'm looking for questions. We haven't done just a question show in a long time, so I'm kind of glad we're doing one. Usually Flesh Priest and I are just riding like fools, like we're just like, look at audience, ha ha ha, and we just don't care. We're having good, so it's nice to have it talk to the audience for once.
This one is from CJ Anger. Not sure if it can be answered in a short conversation, but was wondering if there were any tips or daily exercises that could be done to help with astral travel. Seems to be my weak spot.
You know, a recent client of mine, that's been his big thing. I don't know if that's the same guy. Maybe it is. But yeah, okay. So I'm going to jump on this one because I've been putting Brandon on the spotlight. I'm going to give him a chance to take what I said and run with it instead, or shit on it, as the case may be. So astral travel. Close your eyes. I want you to picture an idyllic mountaintop meadow with flowers everywhere. And I want you to envision a thunderclap high overhead. And when you look up, you see Thor riding his chariot through the sky. Now open your eyes. You just went to an astral place just now. And that really exists there. You just saw that. That was real. Now, what you're asking me is not how do I go to an astral place? How do I do astral? That's absurd. You do it all the time. In fact, the world you're seeing right now is technically a vision in the astral because it's your imagination already. So what is the astral? The astral mind is what the imagination is the side of the astral that we see with our visceral mind. Okay? So it's the side of our mind that sees colors, shapes, feels and smells and all that stuff. The astral itself is without those visceral senses, but it's all the ideas behind them from which those feelings and senses spring. So to have an astral experience is very easy. You just allow yourself to go there, to imagine those things. Now, there's two problems that arise with this. Number one, people are trapped in an embodied delusion in which they think that if I don't feel it, like I think that if I don't feel this ring with my fingers, it's not real. Not true. That's not how any of this works ever. It never did work that way, but it's how we think it works, so it has to be that way or else we don't count it. You're going to say to me, yes, but wasn't that just my imagination when I did that? No, it is not just your imagination. It is your imagination. It's all your imagination. Even right now is your imagination. That doesn't mean this isn't here. It just means that what you think it is doesn't exist. That means what you think it's not also doesn't exist. If you say, that ring is just steel. No, it's not just steel. It's never been steel. Steel is an idea. It's an imaginary idea. So what is it then? It is something. It's just not a thing. Okay, so this Thor is the same, except we don't have a material to attach him to. That meadow, we don't have a material to attach it to when we go there, so we think it's not real, I'm just imagining it. No, the pyramids were once just your imagination until someone decided to rot them out of stone. So, if you want to go into the astral, step one, let yourself imagine it and let your imagination run wild. Go daydream, just do it. Don't worry about it being real or not. Role play it. Do it on purpose. Make it up as you go along. Play Dungeons & Dragons with me and Eddie. Make that shit up as you go along. And be okay with it being made up. And what you're going to find is, a lot of the time what you thought was your imagination will come true somehow. It will have meaning somehow that's deeper than what you thought it did. The thing that you thought was just in your head, you're going to just kind of go, you know, I thought I was just imagining Thor, but you know what? When he said that thing to me that you know, I don't know, some random thing he said to me, it means something big. And the next day I put it into practice and it worked. So maybe my imagination is not just my imagination. You'll get that epiphany. So when you're asking me, is there any practices I can do? When he asked me what I can do to have an astral practice, what you're telling me is you don't trust your imagination the way it is already. You want it to be more vivid. You want it to be more like a dream. You want it to be more like a lucid dream. You want it to be more visceral. I don't know how to help you with that because everybody ticks differently. You can do there's a million things you can try. You can try gateway process. You can try meditation. You can try binaural beats. You could try a million different things. Psychedelics will definitely get you there the easy way, but it's also an uncontrolled way. In other words, when psychedelics happen, you kind of, that's like just pulling the cord on the thing that's keeping you contained. It's like chopping your brain out for a minute, and now you're a being without an ego for a little bit. You get that full experience. But that's like riding a wild horse without reins for most people. It usually takes a lot of practice and work to do that in a way that, so in other words, doing ayahuasca, for example, without a spiritual place to start from is just an acid trip for you. But if you come from a spiritual place, it can be a meaningful thing to have and a powerful experience again. So psychedelics do leave you with a lot to think about, Hellspine, you're right. And most people, unfortunately, that get into it, don't go into it for that reason. They're literally just like, I want to get fucked up, and that's why they do it. And then they go, wait a minute, that was wild.
Real quick, there's another super chat from Shaman.
Thank you, Shaman. Go! So when you're asking how to have a more vivid, how to have a better astral experience, trust your imagination is step one. Don't try to make it more real than it already is. Now the other question is, and then I'll give it to Brandon, is about objective astral versus subjective astral. The infinite state of knowing is always subjective. The objective is what happens when two different positions within that subjective agree or disagree upon something that they experience. So it's a collective corroboration, an agreement. So the objective is, so materialists think the objective world is what's real and the subjective is what's false. The non-dualist spiritual person understands that there's no difference between the two, and the subjective is how you experience everything. Okay, so the subjective is always valid even when it seems wrong. It's always valid. This is why if someone says to me, well, Thorne, when I speak to the devil, he's evil, and someone says, Thorne, when I speak to the devil, he's good, you're both right. Neither one of you is wrong. Okay, just flat out, I'm going to say it. I may disagree with you, but neither one of you is wrong. So, like Brandon said earlier, I don't want to discredit your experience, because that's not the point. I'm not here to, but you're asking me is because you see, or Brandon, because you see us as somehow expert in this. Really all that means is that we agree with you fundamentally, and you just haven't figured that out yet. All right, anyway, so when you're having that subjective objective astral attempt, if you're trying to make the astral objective, that's a lot more difficult, because the only way you can access it is through the subjective internal mind. You can't go outside yourself to the astral. The astral's not out here. The astral's in here, which means it is always going to be through the perspective of the subjective, always. And that means it's never, you can't go to Paris with your astral body and see literal Paris, because if literal Paris doesn't exist, there's no such thing as literal Paris. Literal Paris is always an idea in your mind, so it's always going to be whatever your idea of Paris is, no matter what you do magically. That doesn't mean that you won't see things that others will agree. So if I go to Paris, I say there's a green bag of garbage on 4th Street right next to this tower and blah, 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 blah. Someone might walk there and see maybe not a bag of garbage, but a garbage can. Be like, wow, he's pretty fucking close. There's definitely garbage there in that exact spot. He must have seen it. No, I didn't see it. I really didn't. And it wasn't just a lucky guess. It's that my subjective intuition says, my subjective self knows that in some universe that's true. So it doesn't really matter. Remember what I said earlier, and Brandon loved it and said yes. I'm not saying that this is all bullshit, but I'm saying it's all bullshit. I'm saying that it's deadly real, it's deadly serious, but it is not the superstitious thing you think it is. The thing that you've been told that it is, the reason you're asking me the question is because you're still buying into the fake version that you've been fed so that you never find the real version. The longer you go looking for the Hollywood, I can leave my body and fly as a spirit, the longer you're never going to find it, and the harder it's going to be for you to actually do anything and achieve anything. You're just going to be, why can I never get my vision? And then this is one of the reasons, and I'm going to go to Brandon, I swear this is going to be it. One of the reasons why charlatans do so well in this industry is because some of them aren't really charlatans in the true sense. They know what's true. They know that some of this is made up and they capitalize on it. Okay? But some charlatans inadvertently, by playing with the symbolism, get the right answers too. So a charlatan already knows how much of this is bullshit, and some of them are actually very powerful magicians, actually. You can be a charlatan and totally legit at the same time. Nobody says you can't be. So a lot of these people that are selling you these things, these ideas, saying if you pay me $100, I can give you a ritual and make you fly in the astral. Go ahead, give them your money, and maybe that power of placebo will work for you, and you'll have a psychosomatic result. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying try to see it for what it is. And if you can do that, then just like with enlightenment, when you put down the quest to be enlightened, you will find you already are. When you put down the quest to do astral projection, you will realize you're doing it all the time. Brandon, I don't know if I said to, like, I'm going to let you go. Hopefully you can either argue with me or add to me. I don't know, but I'll let you go. I liked my answer, in other words, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with your answer. I do think there is a place to have an experience, an actual out-of-body astral experience where you, like you said, you see the green garbage bag in Paris. But in my experience with astral travel, like you said, it translates in a more subjective realm. So say, for instance, I may travel to my grandfather's house and see him sitting on a couch watching TV, and an astral understanding of something, reading a book, when in actuality he was educating himself through his laptop, right?
And I think I gave you that exact analogy once. I love that analogy. Keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that he was in the act of educating himself. So I saw him reading a book in my astral thing, but he was actually, educating himself online or whatever it may be, and it was a totally different setup. But I still saw the energy of it, right, through my intuition, subjective understanding. And so the way that you put it was pretty brilliant. And so the thing that I would say is that there is a way to answer the question directly, to have a practice, and one of the first things you got to do is release the understanding that your imagination is not real. Your imagination is it's every bit as real as the laptop that I'm speaking into, or the microphone I have here, or the table that I have. It's your imagination is as we've said several times in this episode, deadly real. The moment that you really grasp that, you will astral travel with no problem. Because you'll know that when you close your eyes and you go to the mountain and you see Zeus, that's actually happening. That's really happening.
And I said Thor, the fact you said Zeus is so great because they're pretty much syncretized in so many ways. It's so great you said that.
Exactly. Yeah. Thor and Zeus. So the fact that you can go there and do that, if you really believe that that's happening, then it will really happen for you. And that's when it takes on the Hollywood quality. When you truly convince yourself that you're there, then it really comes in and you have a body experience of actually being there. If you can't,
because the psychosomatic process takes over and you'll feel it, you'll be there visceral. I'm completely agree. Yes.
That's it. The belief structure is everything. And so what you have to do is have a daily practice of imagining things vividly as much as you can, and believing that what you're imagining vividly, when you go into those spots and areas and you create a story in your mind that the story's actually taking place, you have to have almost an insane belief in it. And if you do that and separate yourself from whatever belief structure you have that tells you that it's not, have a practice around doing that, separating yourself from the belief structures and actually diving in. And it could be something like this. So say, for instance, you sit down in your ritual space, if you have one, or if you just sit down in a chair or whatever it may be, some place to you that feels quiet but also kind of sacred to you in your subjective experience, that you're like, I'm in a different space. When I enter this space, I'm in a different space than wherever else I go. Like, this is a different space for me, whether that be your ritual room, your favorite chair that you meditate in, I don't know where it would be, but some place that you feel different than you do other spaces. Get in that space, sit down and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm for the next 10 minutes, and you can even set a timer on a clock that'll give your psyche some kind of safety net. But you can set a timer on your phone for 10 minutes, and you can sit down and say, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to imagine shit. I'm just going to imagine the hell out of everything I possibly can, and I'm going to believe with all that I have that everything that I am imagining is real. Everything I'm imagining for the next 10 minutes, it is really happening. For the next 10 minutes in the special spot that I have put myself in, it is all real. And you do that every day. And you may not believe shit. You may not believe that anything that you imagined is real the first few times that you do it. But if you're persistent enough and you make it a daily practice, eventually you're going to start having some vivid shit happen, and your belief structure is going to start to change little by little, because you're convincing yourself on a very minute level, on a subconscious level, that your belief structure can change. And the practice of it will start to open up all those doorways. And so that would be the best practice that you could do, is start to imagine that you're actually in places, and that for the next 10 minutes in the special place that you put your three-dimensional body, that you are projecting into the spot, and you are actually there, and everything you're seeing is actually unfolding in a very real way. Just give yourself 10 minutes to believe it. You don't have to believe it all day. You don't have to believe it every time you imagine it. But when you're in that special place, that special subjective sacred place you have, whether it be your ritual room or your favorite chair, and you sit down and time yourself and just believe that everything you imagine is real for those 10 minutes, cool. Do that. That would probably be, that's kind of how I guide people whenever I am getting them into envisioning things better, but also challenging beliefs around imagination. And that will get you into astral projection and get it grounded into an experience that is actually very visceral for you and very body projected. That would be the practice that I would do if I was starting into it.
And I would add to that, if you're going to do that, my advice would be to add in your environment. Most of the astral projection techniques require or encourage you to visualize yourself in your environment from another position. So, let's say you're sitting in your chair and you're going to put yourself in the corner of your room looking at yourself. And you're just imagining it, aren't you, in that moment? Yeah, okay. So then at some point you click and you become, that's where your awareness is, in that imaginary dream space. Well, we can do this in another way. When I do magic, when I do ritual, instead of going off into la la land, I'll say I'm going off into la la land, what I like to do is overlay the astral and the reality together, so that, I've said this a million times, this little pedestal with a candle on it becomes a roaring torch, and my altar becomes a beautiful marble masterpiece, and all the things get turned into an astral temple of magnificent proportion. And the coat rack on the corner that I put the demon skull on, I don't have one, but I just, for shits and giggles, if I did, the little mannequin I put the demon's altar and all this stuff on, suddenly that becomes the demon, or the idol becomes the demon, and I see it moving in my mind's eye, and it becomes a big blown up thing 20 feet tall, and now that's what I'm talking to in my mind's eye. That's what you're doing, is you got to take those basic things, and that's a good bridge, because it's actually harder to go from, for some people, to go from sitting quietly to imagining to going there. Sometimes a good bridge is to create a foyer, so to speak, to create an entryway, so that, and that's what your ritual space is supposed to be, right? Isn't your ritual space your circle and the space around you? Isn't this supposed to be different degrees of identity of reality, so that within that circle, reality is firm. This is me. This is my place. I am the. Everything outside gets to change, though, right? That's usually, and I don't use a circle for that reason, because I like to sit in my own shit, so to speak, magically speaking. But that's the point. So in Shadow-Namicon, the ritual with the communion ritual, that's what it's set up to be, is you're creating a foyer, a twilight dimension, a gateway dimension, a place where your world and the spirit world can mingle, and you're safe there because you can just retract back into your consciousness anytime. You're overlaying the two worlds together, and that is what makes it really vivid quickly. Once you get into that practice, it gets really vivid quickly. Now, Lowland says, that sounds like a good recipe for schizophrenia. You can't catch schizophrenia, my friend, so you're either schizophrenic or you're not. So I take it from someone who's been accused of having it. You can't give yourself, you either have it and develop the quirks, or you don't have it. So at least I don't think it's, at least every doctor I've talked to says you can't catch it. You can't give it to yourself.
No, so. Man. That's not the common cold, dude. You can't think yourself into schizophrenia.
And Eddie said it too. I love you, Eddie. Eddie said, he must have said it, I didn't see him say it. He said, real schizophrenia is a neurological disorder. It cannot be induced or removed. Yeah. So no, you can't make yourself schizophrenic. What you can do, of course, to a rationalist, to a person who is, when I say a rationalist, I really should say an irrationalist, to some of these people who are really hardcore skeptics, and maybe we'll end on that subject, because I think that's a good subject to end on. I think because of the mind games that they play with themselves, they would accuse me of playing mind games because they're right in that a lot of people do play mind games with themselves. That is to say, a lot of people in... Yeah, and I mean a lot of people in the occult in particular, there's a reason their eyes go in two different directions and they're kind of kooky in the head, because a lot of the times either they have put themselves further out into this delusion, or they were already there and they're just kind of seeing the world differently. And I'm not saying they're wrong, by the way, when I say that. I'm just saying that's why they seem a little off to some of us, because we're in a different consensual dimension. That same cuckoo that I'm talking about, when he arrives and talks to another cuckoo just as crazy as them, they think they're sane. You know? How do you think cults form? You get a bunch of people who are just as nuts together that agree on the same weird shit, and they do the same weird shit together, and they're normal with each other. So it's a spectrum, guys, I guess is what I'm saying. There's a spectrum of truth here.
We have that.
Oh, we do?
Yep. That another one from Shaman. That thought practice does work. Do that idea in your theta state. Thank you, DH, for teaching me that. I did learn level.
Thank you, Shaman. Yeah, theta's a good place to go. Alpha works too, but you won't be as deep. Theta's more dreamlike. So when you go theta, you're going to really be off in La La Land, and you might even fall asleep if you go too deep in it. Alpha is a good place.
I have something I want to add to the whole astral talk before you continue.
Sure.
Else. I don't really have too much for advice other than to let go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just let yourself go. UDH, you know about my my dream states that I go into, and like my...
I call them dream dates, more like it. They're more like dream dates. You go on dream dates.
And you know what I mean.
I know, I'm kidding.
And like the sleep paralysis that I've had, and I recently told you about those instances where I'm like simply walking through the house and I feel like I'm pulling back inside my body, like shrinking down, like almost like back seat, but not really. I'm still me. I don't feel any different, just muffled in senses, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But you also know about that instance I had, what was it, back in January? That, that person who's very dear to us was going through a really rough time, and I actually performed a ritual somewhat in my sleep state. I believe it was more of an astral state, now that I'm looking back on it. She was going through a really tough time, and I went to bed thinking of her. Just like chanting to myself how she's going to be okay and things are going to get better, and self-love, 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 all that shit, you know, just like a mantra going on and on and on. And like that whole mind awake, body asleep thing takes over, you know, everything, all of your senses, it's just like everything's fuzzy. It's like, you know, it's like a staticky TV, you know? That's what your hands feel like. And I, because for her birthday, I got her this really gorgeous, something told me get her a chunk of rose quartz for her birthday. You know, the stone of self-love, the stone of love, the stone of healing, you know, stuff like that.
Yep.
So I gave it to her. And in this dream state that I was going into, I saw it. I don't know anything about what her robe looks like, but I envisioned her laying in bed trying to sleep after this horrible night, and the chunk of rose quartz sitting on her desk, emanating a healing pink glow into her room, like bright, taking over. And an entity came to me in this state that I'm in, and said that she will work with this person. And it was told to me to leave 3 apples out as an offering, like 1 red, 1 green, 1 yellow. So the next day I go to the food store and I get these apples, but I have a commune with this entity to figure out, cause I had an inkling that it was Lilith. I didn't know for sure because I never worked with her. And during this commune with Lilith, it turned out it was her. So, you know, I did an offering and I thanked her, and I completed the ritual. But I've never experienced that before. I'm sure I might have traveled in the astral little bits here and there, unknowingly. But but my advice is just to let go.
You've got to let go. You got to trust I think that's what, and that's what that me and Brandon have been saying, is you got to use your illusion. You got to use your imagination, go into that imaginary truth, let it be real, and then run away with it. Let your imagination have control. Our materialist mind says, don't let your imagination have control, because that's not real. No one, well, I shouldn't say no one's ever been hurt by their imagination, because obviously it's real, but, so long as you keep your wits about you, and you can have discernment, letting your imagination run wild doesn't hurt. And by the way, Eric Wedding is here. What's up, my brother? Hope I see you tomorrow night, my friend. I'm glad to see you, man. But yeah, so let's end on the subject of the skeptic. Let's end on that subject, because we got about a half hour left, and let's end on the subject of the skeptic, because I come from both sides. I lived both extremes twice now, basically, because I went from, not quite twice, but 1.5 times. I was a spiritual magician type person for, I don't know, a decade, from my teens to my early 20s, to a hardcore skeptical rationalist from my 20s until 2018. And now here I am, and I've kind of, the left and the right hand are clapping now. I've got both. I'm working both at the same time. So let's touch on that briefly, if you don't mind, if you're okay with that. What do you think of rational skeptics? Do they have a leg to stand on? What is the issue here, if any?
When you say that, what is the issue here, if any? I don't know exactly what you're looking for there, but
Well, why don't the two sides of the conversation ever agree? Why does the skeptic and the magician tend to not agree?
Well, because the magician, in their subjective reality, perceives things, right, quote unquote, that the skeptic rationalist has a hard time perceiving. And the problem is, the magician, when they perceive things, that's a very real act, just like what we're talking about, the imagination being real. The skeptic would never buy into that, and due to that, it limits the experience of what the rational and the skeptic is going to be able to perceive, as opposed to the subjective thing that the magician's going into. I think one of the main things that happens is, this has been my experience, is that I'll start to have awakenings and experiences that I know are real for me in this journey, on this end of the spectrum, and there's no way I could turn around and say that wasn't worth anything. There's no way I could gut those experiences just by saying, there has to be a rational explanation for it, when I know for sure the rational explanation actually involves the thing that happened, that it was real,
right.
To me, in my own, multiverse. And so in that, that there's no backtracking from that. And that's the reason why you have the magician experience, or the sorcerer experience, or the quote unquote new age coined experiences of going in and out of these intuitive places and astral experiences and things like that. And you have those experiences where they cannot be denied to the person that's in the middle of them. They'll never get them to deny that happened for them. It was an extremely real experience for them that was backed up by their three-dimensional reality. It shifted when that happened in that experience. And so in that, there's no way you're going to discredit that for them. And so the rational skeptic will never get there if they don't step outside of their belief structures and actually see it from their point of view, by having a similar experience and adopting a practice or a set of or allowing themselves to have a set of experiences that could recreate something similar for themselves. They would never allow themselves to do that, and so you'll never see an agreement in that instance. And that's why you have both sides of the spectrum, constantly, touting each other in different ways. The one who's having these experiences that open up and that the rational or skeptic would say is insane, or that the rational skeptic is saying it isn't what you think it is, and all these different things. Whenever that happens, usually the rational or skeptic can't name a time in their life where they've come close to having a set of experiences or a set of things that they allowed themselves to go through that would recreate a similar experience in them and see for themselves if it's real or not for them. But it would almost be impossible to do that unless you loosened up the belief structure, because the belief structure is what's going to allow, just like what we were talking about astral travel. You will never astral travel if you don't stop believing that your imagination is not real. You'll never do it. That will shut down that whole experience of having a visceral astral travel experience for you if you don't get past the fact that your imagination is real. You have to adopt that very foundational belief before you can ever even experience something more. And so it's hard for the rational or skeptic to actually go into these these areas of experience and have something for themselves that they can say, well, you know what, I can compare notes now, and we can see, where I'm at on the whole spectrum of what I believe from a very scientific point of view. It's hard to do that, because in order to recreate the experiment, you have to change who you are, and so it's hard for that to happen.
Yeah, if you don't share an event or experience that gives you some kind of comparatory thing that you can relate, it's difficult. Like if we can't relate, then it's difficult. But I'd say, let me take it one more, and I said this earlier, I alluded to it a few times tonight. As an intellectual person who has been on both sides of this conversation, in other words, I strapped swords to myself to do battle with the enemy over it, we'll say. That's how much I believed in both sides as oppositional entities at one point. So I know the arguments for both sides. I am one of those people then who has done that. I am the rational skeptic. I am the magician who has been on both sides of that, and I see both of them. And I go, wait a minute, this is what's really happening. So I'm a conspiracy theorist of the highest order, mind you, so this plays into that a little bit. But I kept saying it tonight. The powers that be don't want you to know what power you truly have.
Yeah.
Because they know what power they have, and they know the power of belief. They know the power of convincing. They know the power of egregore. They know the power of all of this. They've known it for a lot longer than humanity's been allowed to think it's been around, because humanity's been around for a long ass time. Humanity has been taught this idea that magic is this supernatural thing that bends and breaks the laws of reality, that it is a mystery. When I say that it is a mystery, but when I say it's a mystery, I mean that it is irrational, or that it doesn't function in rationality, or some other thing. So in other words, a skeptic has been given, let me start over a little bit. We have been taught that magic is this superstitious thing. And so when people believe in magic, even the ones who are having real experiences in magic generally don't know what they're actually experiencing.
Right, it's true.
And so when a skeptic gets a hold of them, a skeptic is pre-programmed with a straw man built into the question. It's actually, when you encounter a skeptic who says, can you prove magic? That's a straw man. It's actually a begging the question already. The truth of the matter is no one can prove magic. Magic is delusion. Maya, meaning magic and delusion and all of those things, means it is not technically reality. So no, I don't think I can prove magic. I never will tell them that. People say, well, if you really believe in this, why don't you take the James Randi challenge? Because the James Randi challenge is designed for you to fail, not for the reasons you think. It's not because they're going to rig it. It's not because they're going to make the test too hard. It's because in order for them to agree that it was magic, it must do something that is, I don't want to say miraculous because I don't not believe in miracles. It's that I don't think that miracles happen outside of the realm of natural law. Miracles follow natural law. You don't see how they began and end, but you see the outcome and go, aha, there's no way I could have done that, so it's a miracle. Well, you don't actually see the whole flow. If you did, you'd know that it was all you're doing. It's all fine. So the skeptic is going to hear that and say, oh, you're just rationalizing what you're seeing. And they don't realize they're doing the same thing, but we won't go there. So they are arguing a straw man that they don't, to give them credit, they don't know it's a straw man. When I was arguing it, I didn't know it was a straw man. I literally thought that I could disprove all magic and all spirituality because no test could ever show that any of the claims of magic are true. And then I started to realize that the claims of magic are not the claims of what metaphysical masters have said magic does. So if we go to the truly enlightened masters, the ones that truly, truly serve as the beacons, the Buddhas, the rishis, the whatever, we go to these people who truly have that, the ones who wrote the Vedas, the one who if you go to Plato and you go to these and Socrates and all those people, if you go to these archaic people who knew, they never claimed the things that pop culture claims magic does.
Right.
So the skeptic sees the mythology and says, people really believe X, Y, and Z. I question that. I wonder if I went back in time to ancient Rome or ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, did people really think that the star in the sky was just a chariot and the crown of Ra? Or did they know that that was somehow not literal? That is not to say they didn't see it, mind you, just like we said with our imagination before. I have no doubt some of them saw that and believed it. What I mean is, did they know that what they were seeing was an idea? And I think a lot of them did.
A lot of them did, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it shows in the connection and the metaphorical truth hidden in the language that they were using in their myth. I hate Norse mythology because to me it's really goofy. I mean, what's the creation of a world? A cow's milk or some weird shit? It's just stuff that doesn't fit in my brain. It's just, I don't like it. It's not. But if I grew up in that culture that spawned that probably made a lot of sense to them as an ontology in a metaphorical way.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting to here is that the rational skeptic and the materialist, they're deluded into thinking that reality forms out of the objective and becomes subjective that way. That's absurd because your objective experience is how you know the objective. So you can't say that
right.
The one creates the other. They don't.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand, like together perfectly. You have to collapse the objective select. I still call it the subjective because it's more fun, but yeah. So they think reality is objective up. They think it's emergent from an objective truth. The non-dualists would say that both are wrong and both are right, that reality is an illusion, period, but there is being, there is knowing, and that is all that's true. The magician comes in several flavors. The flavor that I am is the non-dualist magician, in which I don't actually think anything I'm doing in magic does anything at all. I don't think I have any control over the world. I never did. I never claimed that. When someone says, Thorne, can you do a ritual to fix my life? I can do a ritual, and your life might get fixed. But your life didn't get fixed because of the ritual. And I'm not even going to say you fixed it. And people are going to say, well, why do you bother? I have no choice. My ego has no free will. I do. The true me has free will, but not my ego. This practice of magic is a thing that I do because it gives meaning and context to the synchronicity of the results. If I didn't do the ritual and the thing happened, it's boring. When I was a skeptic and I was walking through my life and I didn't put any meaning on synchronicity and I just said, oh, it's just a coincidence, life sucked. The same pattern mostly emerged, but it sucked. When I said magic is real and allowed synchronicity to matter, life got incredible. And I have this perception of life improving and life being this wonderful gift and life being fun. And I'm not going to say it cured my nihilism, because a lot of people hearing that is going to say, well, then what's the point, Thorne? Why don't I just be happy or something? Why do I need magic? Well, you don't need magic. That is true. But magic still serves a useful function. And again, I don't think that if I do a ritual, it causes anything. I think the ritual is something that's already been caused by the magic itself. The magic already did it. The magic is the intention behind it. The magic is the fact I'm doing a ritual means the magic is done. Because every moment is magic manifesting. Every moment of my experience is a manifestation of magic. So that doesn't compute to either group of people. Because the skeptic says, you basically just proved magic isn't real. Yeah, I guess so. But I've also proved it is.
That's right.
Because your silly little materialist view is a magical production. It's a magical manifestation already. It's just like the Matrix with Neo asking the Oracle, and the Oracle says, you've already decided, now you're just experiencing why. Now you're just finding out why. To think of magic in any other context puts yourself into an inferior position. If you don't recognize that you are already that which creates the moment-to-moment reality you live in already, if you don't see that, then you're at the mercy of everything around you, and you're a pitiful little objectivist that is going to be nihilistic and miserable. If you recognize that you are living a life that you've already designed, and you are manifesting it out of the ether every moment. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that you're creating anything. You're having a dream. You're having a delusion. It's a lucid dream. Is lucid dream magic? Maybe that's the best argument I could make. Would you argue that a lucid dream is magic? No, you wouldn't. Well, what if I told you you could have a lucid dream while you're awake? What if I told you you're always dreaming, even when you think you're awake? You're dreaming right now. That is the non-dual truth. You're dreaming right now. So if you're dreaming right now, what happens if you wake up? What happens if you have a lucid dream? That is magic. That's the magic. Not the candles and the bibbidi-bobbidi boos and the King Paimons and the... I love you, King Paimon, but you're not real in that way. I'm not real. He knows he's not more real than I am. And I'm not more real than he is. He knows this is just this is fun. At least the one I talk to does. I don't know which one you guys are talking to. And Tatum says, no more spoons. There is no spoon. You can't bend something that's not real. You can't bend reality because reality is not real. Thank you, Tatum. That was the spark. That was it. You can't bend reality because reality is not real. Magic doesn't do it. I think EA is mad now because we were going to have a debate on this. We might still do it. So I'll save some of this for that. So, at the same time, everything I just said sounds like I am taking a shit on everything that I make money doing. But it is still deadly serious. It is still deadly real. Cole Smith, you are the tides of fate. There is no seeing it. There is no... The tides of fate are what you're doing right now. This is what I'm doing. My tide of fate isn't going to be the same as your tide of fate. In fact, the tides of fate are... Do you know you're going to have a breath the next moment? Not for certain you don't, but you have an idea. Well, you just saw the tide of fate. That's as far as you can see. Can you see a little further? Probably. I can see quite a bit further. You can see a little bit further. If you want to know what's going to happen, I can picture what's going to happen to me. I have a feeling you're going to be looking for the answers for a long time. I think we're all going to be looking for the answers for a long time. The tide of fate is another, the way you're asking anyway, it's another one of those. First, we have to get the words out of the way. We have to get the description of the question out of the way to answer that question. We have to say, what is fate? What is fate? What are the tides of fate? What is that? What do you think it is? If we understand what you think it is, then maybe we can say. If you mean, can I predict the future? Sometimes. Sometimes. Anybody who takes a risk thinks they can predict the future, guys. The guys who built the pyramids thought they could predict the future. The guys who put a man on the moon predicted the future. Predicting the future isn't actually that special. It's really not. It's just that some people know how to dress it up with ritual and with bibbidi bobbidi boo and make it more than it is. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you won't have these miraculous predictions. And that does happen. See, that's the thing. When I tell you what I just told you, it sounds like I'm saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. It's just not what you think it is. When I was a kid, I had these prophecies about the future. And I really had a good idea of what was coming. For no reason, it's not like I was educated on these topics. I didn't know anything about world politics. I didn't care. I predicted a lot of what's come to pass, but I did it in a way that was meant, can you see the tides of fortune? As an empathic sense, yes, actually. When I get to know somebody, I can genuinely tell a lot about them, that because of I can feel and know them in a way that's deep, I can sort of guess what their fortune will be with me and them, at least in the immediate future, but not like, you know, I wouldn't play the lotto based on it. You know, I know somebody, I go, this person, I can tell that they're going to be a drag on my life. I shouldn't hang out with them. I know that they're going to suffer some kind of major problem coming because they're putting themselves in that direction. But is that magic? No, I don't think so. It's a kind of empathy.
Well,
it's
there's
like
a difference between magic and a gift, correct?
Yeah.
There's a difference between, you know, just like there's a difference between someone who can run a marathon and somebody who can't run down the street. So everybody has antennas that are different. Some of them are just a little bit more attuned to being able to see and experience in a sensory perception in their own subjective world exactly how things are colliding. So.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Please don't be offended. We just try to keep the spam down. This way we can get to questions. I appreciate a lot of, some of them I think are, if I'm reading your emoji speak correctly, some of them are quite nice. But yeah, not many of us are emojyists. I mean that with all comedic respect. But Cole, no, for real. No, you're welcome, Cole. I think the issue is, the question you're asking is like this. If someone were to ask me, Thorne, can you go see the Akashic record? Most people use the term Akashic record from that perspective. What's his name? The guy with Atlantis. Oh my goodness. Or the Theosophist version of it. They have it in their mind from a very superstitious perspective. The Akashic record is equivalent to the quantum physicist concept of a block time universe. They're the same thing. If you understand the one, you understand the other, basically. All time, all space, all events, all possibilities already exist, and your consciousness is what observes them from moment to moment. Can you read the Akashic record? You're reading it right now. Can you read it out of order? You do. In fact, you're reading the whole thing right now. The whole Akashic record, you already know it. And you're going to say, well, Thorne, how come I don't experience it right now? Because your state of knowing's perspective is limiting itself to just you right now. You're going to say, well, can't you move that? Not my ego can't. No, nobody's ego can. Your ego can't make your knowing do anything. Only the knowing can do what it wants to do. You know, the thing that's asking is the thing that can't move. The thing that's asking is the thing that's stuck. The knowing is what moves. So I can't, D.H. Thorne cannot necessarily know what the knowing knows. D.H. Thorne is limited to what is in D.H. Thorne in his story. The knowing has access to all of this anytime. And again, you're going to say, well, how come I don't know it? How come I don't know what's on the other side of the world right now? The same reason you don't remember what you were doing exactly this time yesterday. It doesn't mean you weren't there. It just means you don't remember. I don't remember being Brandon, but I was Brandon, and I am Brandon. But I don't remember because right now I'm D.H. Thorne. Brandon doesn't remember being D.H. Thorne because right now he's Brandon. I don't know what I was doing exactly this time yesterday because right now I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I can guess, I can get close, but I can't actually do it again. I can't really live it again. Not as D.H. Thorne I can't, because D.H. Thorne requires a continuity. Yes, Eddie says it right. DH Thorne's player can choose to ball up his character sheet and play a different game anytime, but the character DH Thorne can't. Yeah, and Lowland Yassine brings up Flatland, which I love Flatland. I also like Plane of Earth, which is like the updated version of that. So I think we're closing in on the last ending minutes here, Brandon. Let's do a buy our crap segment. Those of you who are still here, I don't think we had a big show tonight. I think we only had in the 30s or 40s tonight, which is a little low. But I think I didn't really advertise it. I didn't know what I was going to do tonight, and I didn't really put many feelers out about people coming. But that means all the regulars were here, and I appreciate all you guys showing up. Brandon, tell people how, if they want to get a hold of you for services, for buying your book, for all that good stuff. I'll put a link up to your book again, by the way. Here's the link again, guys.
Yeah, you can email me at brandon@modernmysticshop.com. You can also email me at bnight80@gmail.com. If you have any questions, or if you just want to riff on some things, or if you want to get into, I do a lot of training and work with people. I do a lot of spiritual counseling. I do a lot of different things like that, man. I've been around the gamut in all this. So been in psychology for a long time. I do a lot of coaching for people's lives and for self-improvement and different things like that. The name of the book is, gosh, I can't remember the name of it. It's so late. My mind's blown. But it's
3 hours will do that
for the Modern Mystic. Yeah, Spells for the Modern Mystic. It's basically just my grimoire, and my ex-wife gave it a voice through her writing, through her beautiful writing. So she wrote the copy in it, and it's just really, really great. But those rituals are things that came through my gnosis and whatnot. It's a really great book. The book's purpose basically is to teach through experience. You know, me and DH can, or people like us, and all the great, you know, magicians in the world that are smarter than us or not, or whatever, that have books out there. Everybody in this field can talk to you and reason to you till they're blue in the face about all these concepts and ideas, but until you start having experiences for yourself, you're not going to really learn anything. You can have a basis of knowing and be like, wow, that knowledge landed a little bit differently. Let me, you know, but until you do something with that knowledge, it isn't really going to go anywhere. And so you need to do something with it. And so that's why I just wrote a book that was just nothing but a bunch of spells for different things that you could try out and start to get into and start to have experiences, And that's what makes it fun, you know, is the experience of things. Also on the concept of skeptics, a really great book that you guys need to check out is Star.Ships by Gordon White. He's a chaos magician, but he's also an anthropologist. Just really, really great book about basically the baseline of reality and how we've encountered spirits and the astral plane over years. That's really cool from a skeptic point of view. And from someone who is a practitioner as well. So that's a really cool book if you haven't checked it out yet. But yeah, that's it, man. It's been fun. I really enjoyed it, and that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And I like having you on. I like talking to you because you're you know, I don't have to explain 1 + 1 to you. Like, we can just talk. Like, you're another one that's like EA with me. Like, we can just talk about stuff, and I don't have to. If we do talk about the fundamentals, it's because we're so mind blown about them in our own view. Like, it's not like I have to educate you to even have the conversation. So I like talking to people like that. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you're completely right about that. I think both are important, but I think just like with anything, like if you want to ride a bike, you have to ride a bike. If you're one of the people, there's two groups of magicians I can't stand, and I mean this as adversarially nasty as I possibly can. Type 1 is the bookworm magician. The bookworm magician is someone who they don't put any feeling or any practice into what they're reading. They read all about it, but they don't actually practice much of it. And then they think they're an expert because all they can do all day is quote different masters, and they themselves have never had much of, maybe they've had 1 or 2 experiences, but you know what I'm saying. Type 2 that I also cannot stand is a variant of the bookworm magician, and that is the one who is a poor actor. When they do magic, there's no energy going into it, there's no feeling, they are reciting out of a book, and they're copying steps. And that to me is maybe even more sad, but they both...
That's EA's favorite type of magician, isn't it?
What's that? I mean, who's?
The one I was reading one of his books one time. He's like, "My God, please don't read something off a page during your ritual."
And I don't think he meant you can't read it. I think what he
No.
meant was, and if he's still here, he can correct. I don't think he meant specifically like you're not allowed to read something. I think what he meant was
no.
don't read it and just read it. If you're going to read it, you got to do more than just read it. Now, I've read from a book in ritual, and sometimes it really helps, and sometimes it makes it worse. Because my memory is trash when it comes to remembering and reciting things. So having a book helps. But if you're not saying it from the heart in the first place, it's going to suck. So even if you're reading it just so you can say the right words, if you're not feeling those words, then that's not helping. So it's a catch-22. Words can be very effective. So this is why I call invocations spiritual poetry. That's really all they are. It's spiritual poetry. And by reading the invocation, the spiritual poetry has the effect of changing your energy if, and only if, in the reading of it, you're into it and you're feeling the imagery.
Yeah.
You know?
It was in his book of Azazel when he was covering how to actually evoke an energy into your ritual space. So I believe that's the book he was talking about. So.
You know, I used to have a hang up where I wouldn't read out of a book. I actually literally agreed with that to the point where I would write a ritual invocation and then I'd try to memorize it. That didn't make it better, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, even if I remembered it perfectly, the words are not that important. They're just not. So getting the words wrong or speaking in tongues or reading out of a book, none of them will work, and all of them will work if your energy's in the right place. By energy, I don't mean just emotions, but I do mean feelings. If you're feeling it, it'll work. I will say this. You're doing a curse, something like, I've actually done ritual magic to Slayer's South of Heaven, that whole album I've used. And I've summoned and created offensive servitors using ghosts of war.
Yeah,
I've
oh yeah.
You know, six-sided warriors, sleeping souls will arise, once forgotten soldiers, come to life. I've taken that and invoked like what I thought were like ancient like crusaders and shit to just be a revenant and just go after my enemy. And I conjured that being in that ritual, and I used that song on loop for like 5 minutes, just like really charging that idea and visualizing and turn the music off and just go do something else. And the fucker suffered for like a week afterwards, right? And yes, it worked. So that's what I'm talking about. So one other thing I will say about that, this is why many magicians, at least the ones we know of, it was an operator and a medium. The operator does the ritual, performs the ritual, and the medium feels it. Because the medium, if they're busy doing all the little bullshit of the magic, they can't do it, right? As easily. And I will say maybe that's why the type of magician I am is an intuitive style, where I don't use preordained rituals the same way every time. I say every time I do something and I have an intention, I get a collection of things that I feel is going to be right for this ritual, and then I intuitively use them in the ritual and say what comes to mind. It always works better.
Yeah.
Like my ritual to Clawneck the other night. I didn't get that out of a book. I just said money, sigil of energy and wealth and economic fluidity. Let me put his sigil on it. Let me put blood on it. Let me make it in gold lettering. Let me put Lucifer there because he's supposedly friendly with Lucifer. Jupiter and Venus are both associated with finance and money and wealth and prosperity. Bang, bang, let me put those two sigils. And then I put my own personal sigil over it because I am trying to invoke that into myself. Boom. So put it all together, set it all up, committed a federal crime in the end because you're not allowed to do what I did with money. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get in trouble, but technically it's a federal crime what I did. Everybody's done it once in their life, by the way. Don't think it. Just writing on it you're not supposed to do. Sacrifice that money to my God, to my own personal daemon, my own personal watcher, my own personal energy, and Clawneck, and lo and behold, the next day wealth appears. Did I get that out of a book? No. Did I say any special invocation? No. I called upon my familiar. Bring the spirit into my awareness. Let's do this. With more feeling than that. And results ended up happening. Did I cause anything? No. I was along for the ride as D.H. Thorne. D.H. Thorne is just, I'm the ocean, not the wave, and the wave is magic. So I am just riding this wave going, I did magic and Clowneck gave me money. I sound like an infant child. What have I told you guys? Who knows what I'm going to say about, I'm ranting now. Fucking, what am I going to say, honey? You probably know what I'm going to say. The Simpsons episode where, not the episode, but the beginning of The Simpsons where Maggie's thinking she's driving the car because she's got the little steering wheel, but it's really Marge driving. That's you right now. You think you're driving. You're little Maggie going, I'm steering the car with magic in my own will. Look at me, I'm powerful. But it's really the true thing that you are doing it all. And you're going, it's just synchronistic that you just happen to get what you want. And I mean that with everything. I mean, even when you go to the refrigerator to get a soda, that's a synchronicity between your desire and the drinking of the soda. Your desire didn't cause that to happen either, by the way. But that's Buddhist monk territory. So anyway, thank you, Brandon, for being here. If you guys like my content, if you don't think I'm too crazy or you're not too mad at me for debunking some of your beliefs, no matter which side you're on, and you want to get more out of, you want to get more Thorne, and you want to see how I can be when I'm actually writing and not spazzed out, link in the description is to my link tree. The first 3 links are to my books. All of them are highly recommended by me, of course. I always keep some of them nearby. This is my premiere book, Become the Maelstrom. It's thick, it's got everything. And actually, I'd say your book and my book would probably be a good complement because mine will probably have some things yours doesn't, and yours has rituals I know mine doesn't. So knowing you, I know that it's a good book for sure that you've got. I also have my Etsy page, which we are going to be restocking it for the spring very soon.
It's very empty right now.
It's because everything's been selling all of a sudden again. So probably before, I don't know, probably within a week or 2, it's going to be restocked with more mirrors and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll do a big announcement when it's full again.
In the works right now.
Yeah, and we like to drop it all at once so it looks full. And if you guys are interested in being lectured to by my annoying ass every Monday from 3 to 5, you can ask Tatum whether I'm actually this annoying or not during the class. On Mondays from 3 to 5, I teach an online video training class for $20 a month. You get once a week, and if you can't make the class, you get to watch it afterwards because I record them all and I put them up and I upload them to a private thing. So if you guys want to participate in that, go to my Patreon and look for the $20 group video class. And we do a lot there. We're actually working our way up. Eventually, we're going to be doing live ritual with one another or somehow participating in it. We're going to feel it out because not everybody's going to want to do that, I'm sure. But those people who want to do one live in a group setting, virtually speaking, we will be doing that eventually. So that is where we are working. We've been doing little rituals. We haven't done big ones yet. We've done some very little ones so far. So we're going to actually be working up to actual spirit conjuration and stuff like that. So Patchwork, thank you, my friend. Everything is magic, brother. And Eddie, where is magic stored? I'll let him tell us. Actually, April, Camilla, if you could show us where magic is stored. Where is magic stored?
I will show once again. In the butt.
A little bit to your right.
Right?
No, I mean to your left.
My right?
No, the other.
I'm going.
Towards the altar table. There you go.
I'm a little tired. It's been a long day.
It's a picture of Aleister Crowley in his most goofy getup with the most goofy face. And it says magic is stored in the butt. You can get that on Teespring if you're interested for, I don't know, $30, $25, something like that. So if you're interested, grab it there. And yeah, so anyway, Brandon, Camilla, I'm going to let you guys have the final word and I will just say goodbye. So say whatever you want. You got however much time you need.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care. I'm sorry I didn't have my Flames of Hell background fresh out with that kind of stuff. So anyway, have a good night and I hope you enjoy the discussion.
Have a nice evening.
All right, guys. Thank you all. And if you stuck around this far and you're new, and you don't know me, and you liked the whole thing, and you even watched all the advertising that just happened, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Come again next week. We do this every Thursday. Different guests. Hopefully Flesh Priest will be back. He was not feeling it tonight. He's been a little bit down and sick, so hopefully he'll be better next week. He's working a lot extra right now. That's what it is. So, all right, guys. We'll see you all next week. Until next time, mind the shadows. And